I think it'll be working now. I think we're good. All right. Good to go, Bruce.
Alrighty, alright, call meeting order at 6:02. Good, and then I'll rise for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alright, Alicia, can you roll call, please?
Yep. Steve Bigelow.
Here.
Ian McDonald.
Here.
Lori Largen. Here. Lacey Oster. Here. Bruce Largen.
Here.
Danny Erickson. Here. Matt Fugel.
Here. Alright, our district mission, together we engage, educate, and empower all learners, bridging their passions and pathways to create a successful future and positively contribute to our local and global communities. I will take a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Alright, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll move into public comment. We have 6, so Bradford Lee, you are up first. State your name, address, and what you'll be talking about, and you'll have 3 minutes, and it's your time.
Thank you. I'm Bradford Lee. I live at 349 153rd Avenue, Somerset. So I'm a resident. I'm also a staff member. I'm a substitute teacher. I go by the name of Mr. Lee. And I really wanted to put a plug in for substitute teaching. I've now been a substitute for 2 years, and I get to pick the day of the week. I get to pick whether it's a half, a full day. I get to pick the grade, the level. So it's all my choice. And I come in and I get a free lunch. So I want to tell you, it's energizing, it's challenging, it's occasionally rewarding, but I'll be back next year, should I be allowed. I also want to make a comment regarding recent discussions for who is entitled to make public comment. So once again, I'm grateful to have this opportunity, but I believe that the 3 categories that you've established of student, parent, parent, staff, or resident is what you need. I don't know why you go beyond that. I don't know why this should become that public. It's our school, it's our district. That's all I'm really interested in hearing from, are people from our area. I think to do otherwise tends to open it up to other people's interests. Well, their interests aren't our interests. I'm not interested in their interests. I'm interested in what you have to say, what those of you that come from this community have to say, and working it out. If you want transparency, go to YouTube. I've been doing it for 2 years. So there it is. I'd like to comment about Title IX, about whether to adopt the amendments or not. That's the issue that's postponed currently. And no matter how you read it, no matter how many times I've listened, now I don't get audio, I haven't dug into the verbiage that goes on in closed meetings. But basically, I haven't heard anyone say, how much is it going to cost if we don't comply? I'd like to know that number. And if I don't know that number, I can't vote on it, and nor should you. That number needs to be discussed, what the risk factor is. Whether you perceive it as a big risk or a little, the number ought to be known.
15 seconds.
I am neither Republican or Democrat. And I say that because some of you, I know your political background. You shouldn't know mine, and I shouldn't know yours. And that's the way I'd like to keep it. Thanks to Bruce for managing good meetings.
All right, thank you. Patty Forsberg.
Patty Forsberg, 350 Paquin Drive, Somerset, Wisconsin. I'm speaking in support of our board president and against frivolous complaints circulating on social media, which was written by someone who is neither a resident nor a taxpayer in our district. Instead of focusing on baseless complaints about president's driving ability or temperament, I urge you to direct your attention to board members who consistently violate Board Policy 0144.5. One board member has made misogynistic comments to other members, disparaged our administration, whom board members are required to evaluate without bias, and consistently insults constituents, clearly violating the code of conduct. Two board members refused to consult the Wisconsin Association of School Boards and others suggested by policy, relying instead on Moms for Liberty or the Heritage Foundation to make decisions, effectively surrendering their own judgment to these special interests. One even invited an attorney from Heritage Foundation to sway the board members on the implementation of a federal mandate rather than listening to the advice of our own legal counsel. They have discussed policy matters and publicly made decisions on social media before they were even brought up to the board. They use community groups on Facebook to gather input from a limited and unrepresented segment of the community. Most Somerset School District residents aren't even in these groups, and only a handful are willing to speak up. Is this an appropriate forum for making decisions? One member, who serves on the policy committee, has repeatedly acted as a barrier to the creation and implementation of effective board policies due to personal biases. Both appear to be using their board positions for personal partisan gain by refusing to set aside their biases to act in the best interest of all children. Their constant reminders of their membership for Moms for Liberty and the implication of their decisions are guided by this affiliation, violate the ethical standards expected by any public board member. Finally, the policy 0144.5 references Wisconsin Statute 946.12, which deals with the misconduct in public office. In that statute, it states that any public officer who intentionally fails to perform a known mandatory duty is guilty of a Class I felony, and one could argue that the refusal to implement a federal law is a violation of criminal law. We must stop giving a platform to politicians and outside interests who are using our school district in this board to spread ignorance and hate. There's crucial work to be done, and promoting this kind of divisiveness is both unnecessary and harmful to the well-being of our district. When they couldn't get the attention they wanted within our community, they sought to rally the support from others outside of the district. This complaint is due to the board refusing to pander to special interests. The investigation into their numerous policy violations is just beginning. I won't stand by while two members of this board act against the best interest of our district. As a resident and a parent in this community, I believe we deserve better. We support the president and his work on this board, his dedication to the district, his crankiness, and his questionable driving skills.
Okay, Erica Johnson.
Well, it's about the 20th thing I've done today, so I didn't prepare any comments. Erica Johnson, 1999, County Road C in Somerset, and I'd like to talk to school board about board policies, very similar to what you wrote. In our bylaws and policies, the Board of Education shall adopt bylaws and policies for the organization and operation of this board. Such policies are to include need to meet the education standards established by Wisconsin statute. In the event of any conflict between these bylaws and policies and any applicable law or regulation, including the temporary emergency order or mandates, the legal authority shall prevail. We have laws that were in effect as of August 1st, and we have chosen not to enact them. I wonder if all the board members know that individual school board members can actually be sued because of failing to do your duties and causing financial problems and damages to other people. I'm not sure if you forget making sure to push this policy off if you were aware of that. So, policy PO 0144.3, no member of the board should have, a member of the board determines that the possibility of such a personal financial interest conflict exists. The board member should, prior to the matter being considered, disclose their interests. Such disclosure shall become a matter of record in the minutes of the board. And I think that because people are members of Moms for Liberty, every single time there is a vote on policy, that should be a vote of record. I'm wondering if that occurs. Also, policy 0144.5. Board member behavior, communications, and code of conduct. The board functions most effectively when individual board members act ethically, professionally, and responsibly. I'm not sure that that is being met at this time. Board members accept responsibility for the well-being and positive leadership of the school district, for protecting the interests of the school district as a legal entity, and for facilitating governance of the purpose of delivering the highest quality and educational and related services to all of the district students, not just a portion. General expectation of all the board members. Item B, be familiar with and follow all applicable law, state and federal laws and regulations, which isn't being done currently. And item number E, be accountable for guiding and supporting the policy decision-making process that
15
impacts students, staff, and the community. That's all I gotta say. You aren't following the law or your policy.
Travis Schochner.
Travis Schochner, 2116 54th Street. During the last meeting, the regular meeting, I announced that I am officially converting into being a member of MAGA and a Moms for Liberty supporter. I am sorry to say that I must retract that statement because although I hold many titles of distinction and some not so distinct, and I've been called many things over my lifetime, I cannot be called weird, creepy, or willfully ignorant. It is weird that members of this board, MAGA conservatives and Moms for Liberty members, seem to lack a basic understanding of how regulations get longer. All laws are empathetic social equivalent of a common sense safety manual that exists in every workplace. How do safety manuals get longer? People ignore their common sense and find new and imaginative ways of getting hurt. How do laws and regulations, especially those fighting discrimination, get longer? People ignore their empathy and find new and imaginative ways to discriminate. It is also creepy that members of this board, Moms for Liberty, and some of the Republican representatives that were in attendance during the regular meeting celebrated the tabling of language in language changes that had nothing to do with what they were complaining about. The table language added sex stereotypes, sexual characteristics, and pregnancy to already existing language, celebrating the blockage of discrimination against pregnant women that are students in our school is weird and creepy for a group called Moms for Liberty to do. Finally, it is willful ignorance that people who argue about parental rights and small government are working to force a school board, two mega conservative groups, a bunch of middle-aged adults into the medical privacies of every family in our school district. The jurisdiction for this ignores being presented, ignores legal guidance, it ignores scientific arguments that they make, ignore basic scientific facts like hermaphrodites existing and conditions called trisomy, which is being born with additional parts of a chromosome or fully extra chromosomes. And the arguments based on religion and moral grounds used the letters of Paul to Timothy, which highlights, and I quote, "A woman should learn in quietness and full submission. I do not permit a woman to teach or to assume authority over a man. She must be quiet." This is the language in the books that they were promoting has. That is willful ignorance. So although I can be labeled many things and will continue to be labeled many things over the course of my life, I am proud that I will not be labeled willfully ignorant, weird, or creepy.
David Woolner.
David Woolner, 494 Drive, Somerset. Up here, this is a tough situation and difficult situation to talk to this board about this. But after 3 weeks and have an opportunity to talk to the community, talk to my friends, and express myself and get their comments back to me. It has become clear to me, especially in our senior community, that they all think it's wrong. And I'd asked them, I said, if you think it's wrong or think it's right, I mean, you email our school board, every one of the members, and let them know your opinion. I'm sure that some have been mailed it, I don't know, but I have talked to them again. But I can say that after having this time and being able to look into the situation, it's very complex. I think President Biden is absolutely off base on it. By changing the wording, I did go to a lawyer, talk to a lawyer, and he goes, this is so ambiguous. He says it's going to be a huge amount of money to get a clarification of all of what he's saying. But the biggest thing out of all this is, why do we put our teachers in a position to have to deal with it? Why do we put our teachers who want to educate? And we have great teachers. We have a great school system here. Why would we put them in a position to have to deal with it? These kids are hurting. And you got to imagine the families are hurting. Why would you put them in that position? So why would a teacher possibly influence something which is a lifestyle? I'm a Christian. That's a lifestyle. I couldn't believe the Olympics. I can't believe in 4 years what's going to come in our Los Angeles. We host the Olympics. We have an agenda coming down from the federal government that says, which is coercion, by the way. It's illegal, it's coercion. You're going to be penalized by your lunch money, and you're going to be penalized by your school federal funding. Lowell said in Minnesota, I'm going to penalize them by giving them no state funding. It's coercion. And I am proud of a 5-2 vote, and the members who voted against the school board to table that. And I think you should let it rest after 90 days and not bring it back up. But I do believe that this whole school board unanimously should send out a letter to all other districts. We are not going for this. Think of the kids. Any kid that's in that position as a juvenile. Think about the kids that want to detransition later and the girls that have had their breasts removed. Think about the kids that are hurting. There's no coming back from once they start the treatments. Think about a young lady that when she gets to 30 wants a baby. And think about the fool that pushed it on a juvenile. That's why we have age limits for things, because they're immature.
Thank you, David.
Appreciate your time, thank you.
Patty Shockner.
Okay, Shockner, 1064 to 10th Avenue. I wanted to just talk about DEI intolerance. And I wanted to say, as a mother and a graduate of Somerset, I definitely earned my degree. I earned my high school graduation. I earned every certificate that I had. As a mother of 6 kids who graduated from this school district, they definitely earned their education. My grandchildren, my grandson just graduated, and he earned his education. But you know what else they learned in school? Tolerance. Tolerance means you can put up with people. But after a while, you earn your place in this community. And when we tolerate people who are not community driven, you have a fractured community. And that's what we have right now. This is a DEI community. Everyone who goes through this school district is successful because of our teachers, because of our administration, because of our community, because they all, and we all, the children in Somerset, definitely earned a good education.
Thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is Margaret Johnson World update, performing arts update, performing arts center update. Here.
Yes.
Good evening, guys. All right, I got a lot of information to go over tonight, which is a good thing, a lot of good news. If I start going too quick, or if you have questions that come up as I'm going through it, please do not hesitate to stop me and ask. As we pull this up, let's Exhibit G here. Let's start with that. Just a quick highlight on the other two projects that are going, getting very close to wrapping up. The stadium, if you drove by today, you saw the structure that the new press box will sit on. You can see that the inside of the field itself is starting to look nice and green. Irrigation is going, only 2 short weeks away from the first home football game. Over the next 10 days, you're going to see a lot happening. The rest of the site is going to become green. We're going to put down the remaining sod. The press box will be set and make final connections to the scoreboard and the nice new speakers. Get that all set up, ready for your first home football game. Again, we talked about it 2 weeks ago. The only item that won't be done at that time is the track surfacing. We're going to use the window between the first home football game and the second. It's a 3-week window to do the final track surfacing and the striping. So when you come back for your second home football game, it'll all be together. At the elementary school, things are well underway. We're actually at the final cleaning stages, we call it. So starting to do final cleaning in a few of the wings, moving the teachers' material back to their classrooms. On track, teachers are back in school in their classrooms on the 19th, and the open house is on the 21st, so feel very confident about that. 2 weeks ago, we talked about the playgrounds. Tomorrow, the existing playgrounds are going to be removed. The plan is on the 12th. The first new play area is going to start being installed. We talked about community days. The 17th would be the first day where we're going to install wood chips. And then respectively, the second day would be the 24th, the following Saturday. More details on that here over the next few days. Main reason I'm here is the Performing Arts Project. Like I discussed last 2 weeks ago, we rebid out the project. The numbers came back very favorably. Over the last 2 weeks, we went and we performed scope reviews, as we call them, ultimately identifying who is going to be the subcontractor awarded the work to put together this nice new facility. High level, looking at this spreadsheet, you can look in the left column under description. We have the 37 different work categories, cast in place, all the way down through general conditions. Again, all bits and pieces, different subs that need to come in to create this nice new facility. In the next slide, I'll go through how we scope out different individuals, but again, and this should be in your packet if you guys want to review that. And you had questions, please reach out on that. Can we go to the one top left, please?
This one?
Yes. Now, we talked about this 2 weeks ago. Again, this is just the overall bid tabulation sheet. This shows all the different subcontractors that bid on the 37 different work categories respectively. There's 137 different names here. So again, compared to the first go around, we had roughly 37 more bidders, and it is very transparent in where the numbers came together. Again, I won't go through this in too much detail. It's in your packet. If you guys review it, if you have questions or concerns, do not hesitate to reach out. I think there's one at the bottom if we go to this.
Yep.
So I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. I'll start as this one as an example. Again, you got 30 different sheets, and these all go to the different work categories. So if we scroll up just a little bit, so 033000 is cast in place concrete. That's one of the 37 work categories. We list the 3 bidders, or if there's more, we list the bidders, and then we go through different general scope checks ultimately. How we write our work categories or the bid documents is we put together work category forms, and it spells out all the different entities or things they need to follow, whether it's schedule or phasing, different components, so everyone works together to make sure this building goes in correctly. We made this very easy, so on the sheet it says acknowledges WC 033000. That ultimately means that during the bid process, they reviewed that documentation and the specifications. They acknowledged it. That means that they are covered and they have everything included. Ultimately, for all 37 different work scopes, there's only one category, which is signage, that we're not recommending the low bidder. And in the part of that work category, the bidder was responsible to pick up the monument sign, all the interior signage, and the traffic signage. The low bidder in this instance was $14,000 low, only picked up the monument sign. We did not have a bid bond on them. They pulled their bid, so we went to the next low, who was complete. It's up to Bruce, do you want me to go through all these respectively?
I don't know if you go through it, you just go through the whole project as a bottom line.
Good with that one?
Yep. So let's go to, this one right here, please. So the numbers, like I said, we're in really good shape. So this is the cost breakout specific to the Performing Arts Edition, labeled as GMP 3. This will be our guaranteed maximum price, number 3. So there's a guaranteed maximum price for the elementary school and the stadium. And then this is the final piece to the puzzle that makes up the whole referendum. So if we scroll to the bottom, so after all the subcontractors and general conditions, subtotal $11,725,492. With that, we always carry construction contingency of 5%. We reduced it slightly to stay on budget, but still a healthy 4.87. I'm feeling very good about that. We have our CM fee cost, the architectural design cost through Wold and their consultants, and then we carry some owner costs, so we call it FF&E, ultimately a budget to cover any outstanding items that would be needed to make sure it's a functional space. So always focusing on the bottom total cost, $13,516,936. If we go to the overall, we'll show how that looks right there. Yep. So you can see we plugged in the construction cost itself, that's all the subcontractors and general conditions cost, $11,725,000. There's our contingency line item. Sorry if I'm blocking anyone's view. The CM fee, architectural costs, and FF&E. And that's where this number would equate to the form that you saw previously. GMP1, the elementary school, this has been established. We're a month away from being fully complete. I will make a quick statement that the contingency of $239,000 that we went into the start of the project with, we've had to allocate some funds to make up for a couple items that we found during construction, but there's a healthy $100,000 left, which will be brought back to a central account here once that project is fully complete. GMP2, which is the stadium, again, a month away from being 100% complete. I want to note that the contingency of $146,000, we've utilized roughly $50,000 of that, so there's between $80,000 and $90,000 remaining that will be savings to the project. So if we go all the way down to the bottom, the referendum that was passed to $22,900,000, we are right at zero. So over under, right where we need to be going into this last portion of the project with a healthy contingency and knowing that we're leaving the elementary school and the stadium with almost $200,000 in savings. I think it's a good place to be. So I know I went through that very quickly, but is there any questions on the documents that were in your packet? And again, if anything comes up over the next few days, don't hesitate to reach out. All good?
Can I just make a plug for the groundbreaking ceremony tomorrow? 9:30, right behind the high school-ish for the Performing Arts Center, open to the community. It'll be about 15-20 minutes, not super long, but I know this community's waited a long time for Performing Arts Center, so anyone interested and available, it's open to anyone and everyone tomorrow at 9:30.
Absolutely, good time. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. So thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Awesome. All right. The next item is Spartan Spotlight. It'd be the Washington, D.C. trip. So Carol Zinter and Don Peer.
Well, thank you for inviting us.
So we have been traveling with our 8th grade class starting in 2010 up and through this last summer. We always go about a week or two after school lets out. This slide shows a lot of pictures and we can sometimes get off track.
Speak for yourself, Don.
Oh, sorry. Carol, not under the bus yet. All right, so these are 3 of the years of the kids that have traveled with us. Every year we travel with 20 to 40 students. They pay through our 14 years. They have paid anywhere from $1,300 and now we're up to $1,800, and we don't think that's bad with all the inflation that has happened. Some of the sites that we see, we always stop at the White House for a photo opportunity. We go to the Jefferson Memorial, and Einstein is kids' favorite because they can climb on that particular monument, and they love to have their picture right outside the Institute of Science.
So I want to give a shout out to the late great Ron Berg, who was our curriculum director and was the person who was really the catalyst for getting me to start this trip. He came to me and over several years of researching different tour companies to use and how this would all work out. And was really the person who encouraged me to get things going. And then Dawn jumped on board with me, and we've had several other teachers who have helped us chaperone over the years. Our sort of constant companions have been Diane Slimek and Ryan Herink, as well as a few other teachers who have had the opportunity to come with us. And this trip is really perfect for the end of the 8th grade year because it fits so well with what we do in our curriculum in 8th grade. What they study in social studies, what they study in English language arts is very much connected to a lot of what we see in our nation's capital, a lot of our nation's history. And it's really a great way for the students who are able to come with us to be able to sort of put together everything they've learned through their 8th grade year and then see those things sort of up close and personal in our nation's capital. We have a focus in our curriculum, of course, on American history and the Constitution, and so we get to do some things that relate specifically to the Civil Rights Movement, to the Civil War, to the Holocaust that we study a great deal in 8th grade as well. And so it's an action-packed 4 days of just go, go, go. We're up at 7 o'clock in the morning, breakfast, hit the road, and we are touring till just about bedtime. About 9 o'clock at night, we get them back to the hotel and get them settled in for the night with some stops at convenience stores for snacks and a few DoorDash orders before they go to bed, things like that. But it is a really fun opportunity for the kids, not only educational, but a great opportunity for them to bond with their classmates and have a good time together over those 4 days.
And some of the things, you can go to the next slide, because we can spend time looking at pictures. Some of the things that our students get opportunities to do, they travel with kids who came from their class, but they're not always best friends. So they meet other kids in their class that through the years they haven't had friendships with. That's a full sentence. Some lifetime opportunities. One time when we were touring the Capitol, at a time when Obama was president, so it had to be around 2015, the Speaker of the House, who was a Republican, went walking through the Capitol with all the media following him. So the students that I was touring with got an opportunity to see what it was like to be a politician at your job, doing the things. All the tourists were listening to the interview that he was going through. In 2020, Bernie Sanders happened to be at the airport when our group was leaving, and Justin Hills, who was a huge Trump fan, wore his hat and he smiled for the picture, and so they got to meet a big name in politics. So that's a lifetime opportunity, and he was so happy to take a picture with the people and was a lot shorter than anyone realized. That's what I heard from all the kids. He's so short. Another opportunity that was introduced around the year 2016 was this Twilight tattoo put on by Fort Jackson. It is the Military Honor Guard. Jackson? Nope.
Meyer Henderson.
Meyer Henderson?
Joint Base Meyer Henderson.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
Okay.
I was just there.
But it's where the Honor Guard is stationed, and it's really a plug for military. In 2018, my son happened to go, and he was so moved by the military tattoo and the impressiveness of it. In his junior year, he signed on with the National Guard, and it went back to his trip to Washington, D.C. So he's a guardsman because of that particular display in 8th grade. We go to Abraham Lincoln. You're great. We see the Capitol building from many different sites. Iwo Jima, which is attached to Arlington National Cemetery, we see both of those. The changing of the guards. A couple times we've had the opportunity to lay wreaths. Last time I traveled, Jessica Linkletter, 5th grade teacher, was traveling with us. One of our 5th grade students had lost their uncle, and so we went and visited his grave. So it's in a newer section. He had gone down in a helicopter crash, and the Somerset students gathered around the grave and sent the picture to his sister, Charity Palmer, and she was so grateful that the Somerset students would take the time to do that. So. And so this was our last year that went, and Miss Center is retiring, and her and I have been doing this trip together for 14 years. And so now it's hard to say goodbye because she's not gonna go every other year, you know, it's okay. But we are so grateful for her, all the research that she did. It was absolutely amazing. She found us a tour company that has people who watch the hallways all through the night, so we get a good night's sleep, and we do not have to worry about the kids being naughty, which is amazing. I would say as teachers, that's our probably favorite thing about World Strides.
For sure.
Yeah. But she found the company that gets us on the bus, gets us off the bus, to the airplane. I mean, she did so much, and she went and toured a couple of different tour groups and really has selected the best one. And when they raised the price too much for us, we were able to negotiate down with them. So they've been fabulous to work with, and I'm grateful for the amount of work that she puts into it. So I just wanted to put out a special thank you to her before she leaves me. Thank you. Anything else you want to highlight about the trip?
I think so. Do you have any questions for us? Well, thank you for letting us
working on next year?
Oh, yeah. We're starting to work on 2026.
Both, yeah.
Both,
The
yes.
next couple of years. All right.
Yes.
And are recruiting kids, getting them excited. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yep, already for next year, I believe we have 27 students signed up. So.
We'll probably get more in the fall usually.
Yep. Yep, it's kind of that. You rah-rah, here you are now actual 8th graders, they start talking about the topics in social studies and ELA, and the kids get excited. One of the great things that we get to see, they read the book Mississippi Trials, 1955, and in the African American Museum, Smithsonian Museum, they have the
casket for Emmett Till.
For Emmett Till.
So the kids have an opportunity to go
And see
the history of, because it's in the book, of his murder.
And we have had students stand in line for over an hour just to see that. They are so moved by that particular thing. And then Zinter is very mean and makes us every year go to the Holocaust Museum because that is something that the kids really want to know about and understand and just have that experience. And yeah.
Especially after reading the Diary of Anne Frank.
Right.
Yes, and just all the
Yeah, everything connects
different-
back to our literature and our social studies curriculum.
Yes. And then Washington, his home.
Yep, Mount
because,
Vernon is
yep,
another
that's-
highlight.
Yep, their favorite and how he lived and just his insistence on not being a king. How he stepped down. They had to beg him, first of all, to be the president. And then he's like, after 2 terms, president should be done. There should be no king. And
Were you there when they were finding the jars of cherries?
That was just after we were there this June. Yeah, that news story came out like the next week, so, yeah.
mystify we?
Yeah.
I want to say thank you to the 2 of you, especially Carol, all the time you put into it. It's kind of your last trip, so thank you. Thanks
Well,
for
thanks for going
putting
with
this
us on
together.
this last trip.
It's a hidden gem, you know, for those kids and coming out of middle school. Having the first student that got to that trip, we didn't know anything about it. And having gone on it, it's a hidden gem, so thank you. Clearly you put a ton of work into it.
Yeah, everyone with students coming through, you should go when your kid has
Yeah,
the
the parents have as much
opportunity.
fun as the kids have.
I
so,
think
yes.
the parents get more out of it than the kids to be.
They might.
They might appreciate the education part a little more. So, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next item is athletics activities overnight trips. Troy, Trent.
I'll take this. Trent, I wasn't sure. I thought I had a middle school meeting tonight, so but I'm able to be here. Should have got the memo on the 8 trips we have planned this upcoming school year. We have volleyball, boys hockey, a couple times girls hockey, softball twice and baseball twice, all heading to different places. Some of the questions that come up about it, who pays for what? The only cost to the district becomes the busing for the school buses. Teams pay for the hotels, the team pays for lodging, food, things like that. The other thing that comes up is a lot of times these are obviously further away trips for some, and so they take coach buses. The coach buses are covered by the teams. We make up the difference of what we would pay for Safeway to take us. So an example I gave you is when the team goes, boys hockey goes up to Proctor for a weekend or for three-day tournament, the cost for coach bus was almost $5,500. Safeway would have cost $2,100, so the team pays the difference of about $3,300. You know, it's one of those deals where a lot of times, especially with hockey, we don't get enough opportunities close by to play teams. So you'll see that you're rotated every other year. The girls go down to the Milwaukee or Madison area to play, and the boys go down this year to play. We tap into the Minnesota schools, we tap into as many Wisconsin schools, but there just aren't enough. So we do have to travel to pick up, to complete our schedule. So that's a lot of the why behind that. And then even at that, when you play Minnesota schools, it kind of affects how seeding can play out, because if a team that you're in a bracket with hasn't seen these Minnesota schools, it can negatively impact you if you don't know that. But we do a nice job of mixing our schedule up with Minnesota and all of our conference teams, and then we travel out. Big reason behind the baseball, softball, especially early on, our softball team's going to Rhinelander this year, which has a dome, and so early season, that's going to guarantee us 3 games to go up there and play. Baseball goes down to Mauston. It's been an annual trip, even though this last year it was canceled because of weather, but generally speaking, Mauston, it's a little bit warmer and they have turf down there, and so games are able to be played. And then they both do another trip a little bit later in the year, to kind of like almost a wrap up to their season type of thing, that again provides them opportunity, which even with baseball and softball, you run into the, you know, size-wise, you know, you might be able to find some teams to play in the area to complete your schedules, but size-wise, it doesn't always make sense. And so that's a lot of the reason why behind we travel. We understand that it's a cost to the district a little bit above and beyond than just a trip down to Altoona and back or something like that, but our coaches do a great job of combining team camaraderie with it, and so you know, we feel I feel it's a necessary thing to keep doing as a district. Any questions about our trips?
Yeah, I think there was just an error on number 6. It's a trip that you're
Oh, yeah.
taking in April.
They won't return May 5th.
Right.
They don't get to take a month off.
And I was just wondering, how come they're riding down on the bus and playing the games for number 7 and 8, but they're not coming back, they're staying overnight before they come back, and they were like a little bit over a 3-hour drive. I was wondering, you know, why they don't come back that night?
So you're talking like number 7 when they go to Lodi?
Yeah, 7 and 8.
So they're not going down the day before, so they're getting up at 5 a.m. to make that trip, play the game. And then, like I said, those two kind of fall into the category of a team bonding trip, and you know, it's a long day to get up at 5 a.m. I mean, it's conceivable, and we've talked about they could go down the day before and then come back after the games, but you know, Lodi's down at Madison, that's a full 4.5 hour trip. Baraboo's Wisconsin Dells area. I mean, I guess I could look it up, but I feel like it's, so I guess that, you know, that's kind of the why behind it. Early morning, and then they come back. They usually spend the night in the Dells area, both on the Lodi trip and the Baraboo trip. Anything else?
Any questions, Troy? All right, thank you. All right, next item is the 2023-2024 bullying and harassment report. I think, Abby, you started.
I'll kick us off, yep, and then the principals will check it out. Are you gonna pull it up?
Yep, sure,
Thanks.
yes.
So this year, when we had to collect the numbers for our DPI report, these are the totals that came out. You can see, I want to remind you that some of the same reports fit into different categories, and we have to identify them in the different categories as well. So this past year in the sexual harassment category, these are formal complaints that were made. In the last school year, we only had one, which is down from the previous year of 8. This year we had 9 in the category of racial harassment, which is up just by 1 from the previous year. We had 0 sexual orientation harassment complaints filed, 1 in the previous year. This year we had 5 in the area of disability harassment. We didn't have any reported prior year, so I didn't have prior data. That was a new category that was reported this year. So the next slide, if you would, kind of summarizes some of the things that the buildings are working on when we talk about how do we help prevent bullying and support students. So I'm going to let the principals go ahead and talk about what they do in their buildings.
So in all 3 buildings, we work with restorative practices, community building circles and conflict resolution circles. At the elementary in particular, we begin each day with a morning meeting. We follow responsive classroom practices and have done that the 7 years that I've been there. If you remember, we kind of went away from a PBIS model into a responsive classroom model the last 7 years, intentionally working on community building, solving problems within our community. You want to go to the middle school?
Sure. Middle school, kind of like Pam just mentioned, top 20 is reference to things we do use as a curriculum in our advisory program to build community and how we work and treat each other in our building, the carryover and everything they do. Why Try There is a program used by our counselors with groups of kids and our counselors through guidance. Class are in our rooms, that is down there, and then yeah, I guess that would kind of sum that up, I guess.
Yeah. And at the high school, I would just build off of what Pam talked about the elementary and what Joe talked about the middle school, and just really emphasize utilizing our advisory to help build relationships and a sense of belonging and community within our classrooms. We have counselors and staff members that help work with our restorative practices to help resolve conflicts as they occur, either between not just students and staff, but amongst students as well, to really help navigate those and help build those skills with our students. And then one thing that we are looking at, the middle school has been using top 20 for several years, is identifying different components of that to help utilize that at the high school in different pieces as well, just knowing that students have been familiar with it at the middle school level, so they can have a common language then as they come up through the district.
Thanks. So just so you know that all of the reports from this year actually were settled informally. None of them rose to the occasion where I had to do a formal complaint process or procedure with them. They all were able to meet with families or students and staff and kind of resolve them informally together and come up with a plan. So none of them were formal complaints, resolved formally. Questions?
Yes, I noticed that the racial harassment went up this year by month. Do we have a breakdown as to what schools that were, how that broke down between schools?
I don't, and particularly for the reasons that these are really small cell size, so we have to be pretty sensitive to identifying anybody involved in any of these situations that would identify them by information.
So I'm trying to understand what that looks like as far as informal, dealing informally versus formally. Does that mean making some phone calls and not having something in writing? Is that what that means?
No, I think it means that I, as a compliance officer, didn't have to solve this with the family members. It really was done through the principal, working with the families and solving and coming up with a solution together. So I didn't have to be the compliance officer and go through the process and make a formal decision.
So if we're going up to 9 racial harassments from 8. I mean, to me, that seems like a lot. I don't understand. You know, we talk about DEI, we talk about restorative practices, something's not working. What's the solution? Keep doing what we're doing, or is there something else going to be done? Is there any other kind of discipline action that can occur that?
There is discipline that does occur. Kids, I mean, particularly I could speak to the middle school, kids make behavior mistakes. They play with language in ways that are very inappropriate sometimes and and sometimes realize it. And so we use those, not only is there like traditional consequences, which was one of the pieces that was up there, but we also use it as a teaching opportunity because some kids don't even realize the impact that their words have. So we take it very seriously, and we're getting also a lot better at tracking it and mitigating it so it doesn't go up. We've had years where it's been higher than 9. I can guarantee you that.
So traditional, what does traditional mean as far as?
That's more of what suspension, detentions, out of class, those are more your traditional consequences, followed with a restorative piece on the backside to repair the relationship.
Is that still something we're able to use?
We do use it.
Okay.
Yeah, we do use it for sure. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? All right, thanks for presenting. One thing I want to go back on item 5, Troy. That comes back, I guess,
Yep.
right to the regular
Yep.
session. So we'll have to meet with, so if you have any other questions, please reach out to him. That'll come back for approval by the board on the next meeting. Item 7, building and department goals report out.
Looks like I'm kicking us off. All right, so at the high school last year, our building goal that was developed was by the end of the 23-24 school year, all students will master essential standards for each course according to the pre-ACT Secure, the ACT, Wisconsin Forward, and grades. Just some results that we'd want to report out on at this time, and again, some of our state assessment data is still embargoed, so to speak to some specifics we're not able to yet at this point. Later in the fall, I believe we'll come back and report out on our student achievement data and things of that nature. So again, some of that information right now is embargoed, but what we can share out right now is some of our results from this past year was the development of 3 different 90-day plans. A lot of our focus with that was done on making learning relevant, life applicable, and rigorous. That was the bulk of the work that our staff did last year to really try to engage our kids in things that they can connect their learning to. We worked on creating initial course overview documents to communicate what our priority standards are, the units and topics and resources. That's something that will take that work that we started and continue to refine that even more to have good communication with our students and our families on what's going on in classes. We made some adjustments to our Spartan time, which is a designated time that we have during the day where teachers and students are both available, where we can provide interventions for students, we can provide extension or enrichment for our students as well. Again, the biggest thing for that is we're able to have access for our students to get to their teachers, to get work where a teacher, hey, I want to go see my math teacher, but they're teaching Algebra 1 at that time. It's a time when kids and teachers are all available for that. We made some good adjustments with that. Things that I can talk about is we did see growth in our 10th grade A math reading in the spring. We did see growth in our 9th grade A reading in the spring as well. And then we gave a survey to our kids for our, aligned to our strategic plan about culture and school climate. One thing that we did see at the end, 85.5% of our students felt connected to at least one adult in their building. We want that number to be 100, definitely, but we wanted to celebrate the fact that at our initial one last year when we measured that, that's where our students were at. So not there yet, but that's kind of a place we wanted to celebrate as well.
So Trent, I realize that you did not develop this goal, that you were not part of developing this goal, but you were left responsible for it. And when this goal was presented last fall, I had some questions about it and expressed some concerns about, it seemed pretty broad, and how would it be measured? Because like you said, some of those testing results are not available to us yet. So, rather than focus on the past, can you tell us more about what your plan is for next year? And do you have specific and precise, measurable goal for next year that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, definitely. So we actually had some of our planning stages today with our building leadership team, and that was something that we really focused on, was having good measurable data that we can evaluate throughout the course of the year, doing some frequent measurements to see where we're at as we're progressing with that. And even going through this past year, one thing that we took away from administering some of the feedback from our students was we realized, and even with assessments, we could do some of that earlier to get a better gauge of where our kids at, so we can take action sooner throughout the course of the year. So those are some things that we really want to focus on.
Thank you.
All right, I'll give this as my final middle school building report. We had 2 goals at the middle school this past year. The first one had to do with our professional learning community, developing and utilizing common formative assessments to adjust instruction and improve that student learning. And then our second goal was that our learning community would research and build an intervention plan and process for 24-25. And so a big focus in the way we monitored that work is all teachers that taught a common course together, when they would give an assessment, they would meet, look at the results of that assessment, and make plans going forward based on what they saw. We tracked that internally through a Google form that they would fill out and talk about what their next steps were, and then PLC leaders and I would go through that to take a look at where were needs at and those focus conversations. At the end of the year, when I surveyed staff to say, how have you grown in this manner? Nearly all staff said that they felt like they knew the kids better, that they felt like they had better plans going forward, and they were better able to meet the needs. Again, with that piece, we also had our intervention team met. We began in January. We researched and developed an intervention process that's going to work for us at the middle school. I've handed it off to Joe now. They spent some time today. I worked with both the middle school and the high school, kind of looking forward for this year. And they talked about those conversations that they had, because our goal with that intervention was to make sure that we are understanding that we're trying to give kids a base at grade level for all of the standards that we're required to teach that we've deemed essential. And if they aren't getting it at that first level, what is our response going to be at that next level up at that grade level? So that we can be sure that we're getting them set to go off and be successful according to those essential standards from the state of Wisconsin. To give you some data, we did just get our forward exam data back. It's embargoed, so I can't talk about it. But it's happy, I'll say that much, I can say that. I can't say more than that right now. But we did administer at the end of the year our 2 FastBridge assessments, one in reading and one in math. And each time we give the FAST test, we give it in the fall, the winter, and the spring. Each time we give it, the benchmark goes a little bit higher based on where we're at in the course of the year. So at the end of the year, 68.2% of our students met the end of the year benchmark over the course of the middle school, and in math, 71.6% of our students met that end of year benchmark. So in looking at that, we feel like the focus work that we did on those common formatives and the conversations that we had with each other throughout the course of the year really did have an impact on making sure that we're getting kids to hit that benchmark.
So those scores are a composite of
5th through 8th grade. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And you used the word triangulation in your when you were talking about your interventions.
We'll use the word triangle, not triangulation.
Okay, triangle. Can you tell us more?
So it's like a pyramid. So like the base is tier 1 that we give all kids, right? And so it looks like a triangle when it's not 3-dimensional, but the base is what we're giving all kids. That tier 2 is that reteaching opportunity we give to kids when they didn't get that grade level standard the first time. And then at the very top is those kids that we have a gap to fill, and a lot of times some of those students that are up there may end up a student who's served by an IEP or something like that. But we really wanted to focus on the fact that our intervention is not a path to getting a student into special education. It's how can we attack their needs at a lower level at grade level. That's what we spent a lot of our work on this year, to get a system that's going to work for the middle school.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
As you know, at the elementary school 2 years ago, we adopted the new MyView ELA curriculum, the tool for teachers to use, and we worked really hard on the implementation dip that we did experience with our forward data last year. And one of the things we realized is that we got this new tool, we learned about this new tool, but we didn't spend a lot of time really on
professional pedagogy. What is the science of reading? How do we change being effective teachers of reading? So my goal this last year was to just really, as a professional learning community, enhance and grow in our ELA practices by studying what does it mean to be good teachers of reading. So some of the evidence of the growth in this area is we utilize some Motion 57 funding and are doing the top 10 teacher tools. We did the first 5 tools which focus on the best components in teaching reading, namely phonics, comprehension, phonemic awareness. And it was really exciting, the dialogue that staff had and how they wanted more and they wanted to learn more. I truly believe that our teacher knowledge is the key to our success. The better our teachers feel about the why they're doing what they're doing, the more successful our students will be. You also experienced the presentation on UFly. We adopted UFly K through 2 last year. And then we really focused on that second year of MyView, improved pacing, deepening the knowledge of how we're teaching it. And then Abby, Mindy, and myself attended this literacy leaders training through Seesaw that we were able to bring back some tricks and things we learned and strategies and really share our, deepen our knowledge as leaders. So some evidence that I can share with you, and I'm still trying to make heads and tails of the forward data, and I'm gonna go with happy too, happier. But some kind of cool stuff, because you did hear from kindergarten and their work in phonics, and 95.2% of our kindergartners, this assessment is word segmenting, so they're giving a word, they have to give you the sounds in the word. 95.2% of them were at or above benchmark. I just think that's so exciting. In the early reading composite, so their overall score, first grade went from 46.1% in the fall to 61.4% in the spring. So we're liking that growth. And 71.4% of our fourth graders were at or above their benchmark in the A reading assessment. So that's also fast bridge. So looking for those things, I get what you're saying, it's kind of broad, right? We're doing some broad work, but we're really excited for the impact it's going to have on our ELA and our student academics.
So did you just run out of room on the slide? Is that why you don't have second grade and third grade?
Do I? Yeah, right? You're right, because I said no. I just kind of grabbed 3 little nuggets I could, yeah.
All right, I'm up next. So the Pupil Services, the special education staff, kind of been working through a couple-year process. And this past year, we really took a deep dive into the intervention tools that we are using. We looked at our forward exam kind of data, and we're showing good growth, but we're struggling to close the gap for students supported by an IEP. And so we looked at all the intervention tools. We've met as a staff, kind of dug in, is it doing what we're asking it to do or needing it to do? What do we need to change to make sure we're hitting the mark with our students supported by an IEP? So through that work, we're replacing our reading intervention tool at all the levels. We're going to bring on a new one that I think is going to be more direct instruction from teachers, which is one of my past 2 kind of hard lines for our teachers, is that they need to be more in front of teacher with direct instruction versus using a technology instruction. So they're making that shift, which is going to be exciting. We do see pretty great growth with our math intervention tool that we're using right now, so we're going to continue with that. Especially with our elementary now, we're bringing on a new math resource, and they're also being trained in the top 10 tools, the special ed teachers are, so they're learning those skills, those phonics skills too, which is going to be beneficial. We are going to bring on a new executive functioning program that helps some of our students with some of those, organizations, regulation, kind of some decision making, because we're seeing a little bit of a gap in that, and that's affecting our students' academic ability. So we're going to bring out some interventions with those. And then we have a population of students that is highest that it's been in our district for a long time that use augmentative communication devices, meaning it's a iPad or a computer that they have to actually interact with for it to speak for them, because they're nonverbal. So the trick is, how do we measure what they know? And so we found some programs through our speech and language pathologists that are helping us do that, and what is really exciting is that we're actually seeing that they know a lot, which is so cool. It gives me goosebumps when I watch them reading when they're using it. So those are some of the next steps that we're going to do for this next school year. And the other goal that I had was to start implementing the Wisconsin EL developmental standards, and the first step you guys helped me with a couple of weeks ago when you approved the standards, because they had to be implemented within all of the standards that you approved, so that was approved. The next phase of that for this school year will be then they have to be embedded in with the standards for each class. So that'll be the next work in our EL Wisconsin standards. Questions?
So you're moving from the intervention tool that we had, was it Read Live Naturally?
We're phasing, so we'll still use some of that, but we're gonna bring on a new tool that's more teacher self-directed. Or teacher directed, yeah, not self-directed, teacher
So
directed.
it's one tool, it's not that, one teacher might be doing this and a different teacher that?
No.
Can you share with us?
Yeah, it's called Flocabulary. Yeah, yep, and so it has a lot of resources for teachers to pull from based on the needs that are identified per student. Yep, in the area of reading.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, the last slide is Tricia's recap. I did not pull her out of retirement to have her come back and review her 2 goals, but so this is what she provided. A big chunk of her work last year was supporting strategic plan action steps, as you can see here, and moving through the elementary with the new ELA resource in Act 20. Sarah will pick up specifically with that second goal, right where Trish left off. A lot more work to be done with Act 20, kind of that second half of training for the top 10 teacher tools. Lots of work happening, but there was kind of her recap of what she did. The other thing I want to mention quick too is, you've heard each of the buildings talk about the 90-day plans. And one thing we've talked about just administratively is probably just getting better at bringing you some of that information at a little more granular level. Because when you talk about, some of these goals being pretty broad, you're looking for some of that specific measurable, and all of that exists within the 90-day plans. You're kind of seeing the 50,000-foot overview. And then as staff get together and write those 90-day plans, gather all the evidence, measure, write the second 90-day plan, third 90-day plan for the year. I think that might help bridge some of the gaps a little bit, just with some of the questions that you've had, and I think probably more helpful for the board too, to get a few more frequent updates, just in terms of what's happening in the buildings around building goals. So at this point now, every building has had a data retreat. Middle school, high school was today, elementary was last week, started to move through all the state assessment data, what does it look like, areas of celebration, certainly areas of improvement. Overall, really exciting, as you've heard a few of them kind of say already, which is great, but we'll unveil that in the fall. But a lot of great work happening. I think as I pop in and out, I just want to mention Sarah's done a great job leading those data retreats. First time that she's had to do something like that in her new role, which is great. Really great discussions happening at the building level too. So lots of good work happening, but I think just moving forward, kind of looking through this year, we're going to bring you a few more frequent updates and kind of bring you into the loop when those 90-day plans get written, so you can kind of see what those are, what that's about. When we talk about 90-day plans, what does that mean? What does that look like? What's the work happening in the building? So more to come.
I know it's not a goal question, but since you're all here, like last minute teacher stuff for this next year, does that come out tomorrow? Or is it coming out soon? Teacher assignments for elementary? Things that middle, high school kids need to know?
So this Friday in the
Friday.
school, our administrators' welcome back letters will be in there.
Okay.
I can speak to elementary, so next Wednesday, which is the 14th at 3 o'clock, there'll be a link and then it can go live. We do the Meet the Teacher, so parents will be able to go in, do their campus update, and then see who their student's teacher is, and then sign up for their Meet the Teacher.
Okay. So that's next week?
Next week.
Okay.
So all that information will be in the
Out on Friday.
letter that's in the scoop on Friday.
Okay, thanks.
And high school student schedules for semester 1 get released tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.
Okay.
In Infinite Campus is where they find that.
Okay.
Middle school, same track, is very similar to Pam. The welcome back will be Friday and then next Wednesday. Those individual things get released so you can see from the parent portal where your kids are at.
Okay. And I want to add, our parent newsletter goes out on Friday in tandem with the elementary and middle schools. So. The newsletters are all going out Friday.
Stay tuned.
Our high school schedules go out tomorrow. We put ours out a little bit ahead of time just in case there are schedule changes or adjustments that have to happen with ECCP or Start College Now classes as those things get finalized. So.
Okay, thanks.
And please don't forget to do your annual online update. If you are a returning family, please do it. It makes our jobs much easier. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you, everybody, for presenting. Great. Superintendent report.
Yeah.
Shannon.
I got a big one this time. Lots of Shannon stuff. Okay, so I'll start with just an update on Welcome Back Week for staff. You've heard me talk about a few things already. Between July 30th and 31st, we had our professional learning community leaders come in for the initial training of just kind of talking about leadership at that level and what that looks like and sounds like and how they can kind of help in their buildings execute the big work that we need to do this year. I mentioned a data retreat, so at this point every building has now went through that initial kind of first look of what's happening with state assessment data, started to look at 90-day plans, started to look at focus areas for building goals. That work will continue certainly when the year starts through the month of September. Tomorrow, exciting, we bring all of our new staff on campus. And we have a large group this year. It's pushing 25. Last year was a really small group with some of the reductions and things that we did. So wide variety of experiences. We're super excited. We've got a full day planned all the way from some training to we jump on a Safeway bus that they donate, which is awesome, and do a tour of Somerset and show them all the great things that happen in Somerset, which is awesome. Then we hit Not Justa for lunch and then come back and spend some time in the afternoon with mentors and those kinds of things. On the 7th, we have kind of our 3rd annual community breakfast that we put on with the Chamber of Commerce. So we have a nice handful of businesses coming in to help welcome our new staff to Somerset. Taher puts on a great breakfast to kind of kick off the day, and then our staff spends the rest of the day with Kathy Cranston, learning kind of all the foundational components of restorative practices within the district. Support staff actually had a different direction this year. Some of them will head to CISA for some support staff training, so we've got people going to go in a couple different ways that day. And then Welcome Back Week. So we bring staff officially back the week of August 19th. You heard Eric from Market Johnson talk about elementary staff will be able to get in on the 19th. We are all crossing our fingers that it can happen before the 19th, but we will wait and see. But trying to be really cognizant for all our staff really of just how to use that time to be able to give them as much time as possible getting ready in the classrooms. Elementary will have a big job. Packing up was a big job. Unpacking and putting your classroom back together is also a huge job. So we're having a lot of conversations, just making sure we're intentional about structuring that time. Open house is the 21st, so hopefully we get lots of parents coming in and checking things out, talking to teachers, asking questions. But I feel like as soon as the end of July hit, now it flies, and here we are. So just a quick little update on Welcome Back Week.
Before you go on.
Yes.
I thought I heard the Market Johnson guy say that they were moving some stuff back into the classrooms. Is that correct?
Yep, so they will physically do the moving for furniture, big kind of heavy items. Other items they will leave at classroom doors for teachers to be able to, kind of pros and cons, I suppose, having things delivered into the classroom, but yet then teachers having to maybe move them anyway.
Right.
So, but there'll be lots of people available on the 19th from Market Johnson helping move and organize, and nothing that we want staff doing, obviously.
Okay.
But there'll be lots of hands on deck to help get all of that unpacked and organized, and it's a big job.
Yeah.
The building looks amazing. It will be fantastic, but that causes a lot of added stress, when the start of the year is always frantic anyway, trying to get ready for open house and those kinds of things. So, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so attached to the agenda, you'll see a memo from Dave regarding meal prices for 24-25. I'm going to assume that everyone has read the memo. He provided a little paragraph. Oh, Alicia's got it up right there. Student meal prices haven't changed for multiple years. Given some of the things that Dave outlined here, felt like now is a time that we needed to take a look and increase those slightly. This will come back to the next meeting for approval, nothing that needs to be approved today. If you have questions, certainly reach out to Dave as well, but I think he outlined it pretty cut and dry of kind of where we've been, where he recommends that we go, and the why behind it. Okay? All right, for the rest of my stuff, I'm gonna pop up here, actually. All right. So I want to give a couple updates on some things that I think we should probably start doing a little more often, but starting with enrollment. So want to kind of give you the most current information we have in terms of district enrollment, building enrollment, section numbers, what does all that look like? The most current information we have regarding open enrollment in, open enrollment out, kind of some of the trends, what that's all look like, and then some things that we just continue to talk about and how to continue to get our enrollment moving in the right direction, which good news, overall it is. So, do we have the little clicky thing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, oh, then you don't have to read my mind. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so current district enrollment. So current as of this morning, kind of walk you through where we are overall as a district. So sitting at 1433, and then breaking down where we are each building. So currently at the high school right now, sitting at 454, grades 9 through 12. We have 3 additional applications that are waiting to be completed. So technically, even by now, actually, that number might be up by 3. And then we have 12 new students to the high school from the start of summer until this morning. Excuse me. Our middle school, grades 5 through 8, sitting at 416. We've gathered 9 new students from the middle school, for the middle school since the beginning of summer until now. Elementary's got a lot going on, which is great, but some things we're going to want to kind of talk about. So this is our junior kindergarten through grade 4, sitting at 563. We have 12 applications that have been started and almost completed, but weren't completed quite yet, so I didn't add them to that number, but you'll be able to add 12 onto that fairly quickly. And from the beginning of summer until this morning, the elementary has gathered 53 new students, which is awesome. So, looking at a lot here, so just kind of bear with me. Looking at enrollment in sections. So once we start to break all of those down, what does that look like in terms of how many kids per section? The high school, we don't necessarily do sections, other than I want to kind of break down what it's looking like per grade. So 112 in grade 9, 112 in grade 10, 127 in grade 11, and 103 grade 12. And then transition, or any of our students that are staying in school up to age 21 in our transition program. So those two together are at 103. Want to kind of focus a little bit more on middle school, elementary school. So starting with middle school, looking at grades 5 through 8, so you can see total number of students that we have right now today in each of those grades, and then currently how many sections we have per grade. So in 5th grade, we have 4 sections in that grade, right? Do the math, that equals 26 students per section, right? Grade 6, 95 total students, 4 sections, 24 kids per section. Grade 7, 113 at 4 sections, 28 per section. I'll talk about that one in a minute. And then grade 8 is where we've had 5 sections, and you can see now that class size is a little bit lower at 21 students per section. So this is something that we continue to monitor, and I would say, Lacey's face is like, right? Not ideal. So when we talk about staffing, when we talk about priorities and those kinds of things, these are the kinds of things that we talk about. We would love this number to be closer down to 24, 23. This is great, but kind of holding tight right now. If you remember back when we did our reductions, we didn't replace a teacher at the middle school, and we're still kind of feeling that pinch in terms of class sizes here in particular. And that's obviously the largest grade level that we have in the building right now. And then moving to the elementary. So, early childhood, we have 6 students in our early childhood program. That one is kind of a standalone program. And then currently right now we have 80 students registered for JK, 3 that have applications in and waiting. You've heard Pam and I kind of mention that throughout the last year, that that's something we've been monitoring pretty closely. Pam can speak to this probably better than I can, that this number is higher right now than it typically is at this time of year. And then as we get closer and closer and closer to school starting, that number typically will skyrocket at least 10 to 15 more. Right now, if it stayed this way, 20 students or so in our JK program isn't horrible. We'd love for that to be more down by 18, 17 if we could. We don't want this hovering around 24 and 25. Number one, we start to run out of space. we start to run out of capacity in terms of a teacher navigating kids that little, because there's a lot of needs that happen with 4-year-olds in a classroom. So you've heard us kind of talk about, again, some priorities in terms of staffing, monitoring that number, and that might be something in September that we come back to you as a board and say we really need to add another section. So stay tuned as we kind of monitor that every day. Kindergartens, we have 96 currently in kindergarten, 4 applications that are in process. You can see we have 5 sections at 20 students per section. 90 first graders, 5 sections, 18 per section. Those numbers are pretty good. Grade 2, so now we drop down to 4 sections with 94 students, sitting at 23.5. Grade 3 is the other one that Pam and I have had a lot of conversations about. For some reason, lots of kiddos entering grade 3. So we currently have 104 students, 3 applications that are waiting, 4 sections at 26.75. So if you round up, right, about 27 kids in a class, that's too high. So we also might be coming to you at some point saying we need to look at configuring this a little bit differently, potentially with an added FTE. That's a lot of kids, and feel free to speak up, Pam. I don't want to speak for you, but
That's a lot of kids.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of space. I mean, honestly,
Right, right. And then looking at grade 4, so 93 total students. We have 2 students waiting. 4 sections of grade 4 right now, sitting at 23.75 students per section. So overall, right, good news in terms of we've got lots of kids coming in. I don't have all the data yet in terms of students coming out, but I can tell you it's in our favor in the good. Right now, as I've been keeping track of it, because I get all the emails and all the information about enrollment, overall for all buildings, we're at about 12 students that have withdrawn since the start of the summer. So if you go back to looking at kind of where we are here, trending in a really good direction, which is great. Okay, I'm going to push pause here because it's a lot. Questions on just the initial information regarding where we are, section numbers, knowing that by 24 hours from now this will probably change in some way, shape, or form because we're getting lots of kids. Yeah.
What are you thinking as a timeline for that when you're saying possibly coming and asking for another FTE? I think of
potentially by the next meeting.
Like, I mean, next
Yep.
week kids are getting assignments. I look at that 3rd grade, to me, primary, and having almost 27 kids in the class
Yeah.
seems, when we pride ourselves with small class sizes, wow.
Yeah, I think the other thing that we just try to be cognizant of if we have information potentially about students that we know are withdrawing that just haven't yet, or, right, trying to just monitor that the best way that we can. We don't always have all the information, of course, but we've been keeping an eye on that. You know, Pam, I think, has probably sent me
a lot.
Message 10 per week
But it
of
just
like,
does feel like
one more
every
3rd
day.
grader, one more 3rd grader, right? Again, great, right? But eventually we run out of capacity to be able to navigate almost 27 students in a 3rd grade class, right? So,
Ideally, what's the maximum comfortable class? I mean, obviously, you
Yeah.
have to go over, what's the maximum
do you want to speak to
class
that?
size?
I mean, I can,
For
that's a great
elementary
question.
school.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that there's a maximum. My hope would be to be around 24, maybe like 100, like, right? But 27, it's just something like that's a tipping point, right? You get 24, you can handle. Get over that 27, it's just a tipping point. And the other thing is last year we sat with 24 in our junior kindergarten, and it was not. I mean, it was really hard, really hard. We know that 20.75 is going to grow. We just know that it's going to grow. And I would suspect, when you talk about, I only know of 1 possible not returning for 3rd grade. So that's it. I mean, that's
So with the difficulty that all schools have had hiring teachers, how difficult do you expect it to be to hire an early junior kindergarten teacher and a 3rd grade teacher?
I don't know. I mean, I know what you're saying. There's
Because our
people
next meeting is
have
August
jobs.
5th. Our next meeting is August 19th, and our first day of school is, our open house is August 21st.
I hear you. I can just tell you, there's no way I was going to bring this any sooner unless I felt 1,000% comfortable with where these numbers were going to sit without a whole bunch more movement. Because it's not uncommon, 2 days from now, this could change significantly where all of a sudden, you know, we've got 15 kids moving to Eau Claire, I don't know, right? I mean, so with all the stuff budgetarily that we've been through, I was not prepared to bring this any sooner. August 19th was the soonest I was gonna bring this as we monitor what the numbers look like.
Well, and to be fair, it feels
So-
like third grade's going, like, we saw JK, JK
Yep.
I've been talking to, was on my radar, third
Yep.
grade was not on my radar, it is just every day, a third grader.
And I think JK, we've talked about just adding a half a section,
Just a
right?
half.
So not, so
One
a
section.
halftime teacher, right? You know, I think we're optimistic just based off of when we've had some other positions open for our elementary this year, the number of applicants has been better than we've seen in the last couple of years. You know, I can't predict, 3 weeks from now what that would look like, but
And if one thing you're wondering,
Stay
we
tuned.
do have kind of classroom space earmarked, if that were to happen. In my mind, I know where I would put them, what would have it, like, so that transition would be easier.
Well, the other thing I'm wondering about is with the schedule, well, your schedule next year at the middle school is gonna be a little bit different though. Maybe it would be easier to make, are you looking at possibly making one of your 8th grade teachers
So,
7th grade?
great question. Currently, with how that's laid out, we have multiple teachers teaching across grade levels to
Right.
make 5 sections possible in 8th grade.
Yeah.
So we have multiple teachers that have 7th and 8th grade kids that are making, so we can make that group who has some needs to be addressed by smaller groups work without adding staff to us, which is why 7 looks so much bigger than the rest, but we already are doing those things to try to make the best situations possible for kids.
I think the other thing, kind of getting back to your question, Steve, the other thing that we monitor is, to the best of our ability, information that other districts give us and share about what section numbers look like, with other schools in our conference in particular, or other entities that may have, for example, a junior kindergarten program. When we sat with 24 last year, that was considerably higher than many other junior kindergarten programs around, right? So as we talk about some of the enrollment and competitive, those kinds of things, like all of that are things that we look at and things we monitor. Last year wasn't probably a great time to be able to change that, but something we're talking about right now literally daily and multiple times per day as we're monitoring paperwork and things that are coming in. So again, good problem to have, right? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, and I think I'd prefer to have to add a little late versus adding too quickly and then maybe we didn't need that extra section and now navigating some other issues. So, okay, no other questions about this. I'm going to move on. So before I get to the next slide, which is going to be kind of outlining some trends in terms of enrollment, I just want to make sure when I say some of these things, we all have a common understanding of what I'm talking about. So in a minute, you're going to see the term head count, which literally means as we are tracking enrollment year after year, once in September formally, once in January formally, we do it 2 ways. One is by head count. We're literally like the students that are sitting in our seats in Somerset attending school here, okay? Then we also do what's called a pupil count, which then takes into account, in addition to the students that we have sitting here, that brings into account all of our potentially non-resident students that we have, looking at open enrollment in, open enrollment out, and that's what ends up equaling our pupil count, which will make a little bit more sense in just a second, okay? So 2 ways that we collect data. So let's kind of, a lot here. This is linked or will be to the agenda, so you can look at it then too. But just started with the last 5 years, looking at overall district enrollment. Okay, so this is, right now for this slide, not open enrollment in, out. This is at the end of the day. When our auditors go through our information in September and January, where did our overall counts land, okay? So starting with 1920 all the way through end of last year. So 1920, right, you can see September head count, meaning students that we had sitting here in this building, okay? January head count, students sitting here in the building. September pupil count is once we took into effect how many kids open enrolled out, how many kids open enrolled in, that was this number, right? Same thing in January, open enrolled in, open enrolled out, and this is the number that we typically use as kind of our final marker in terms of where did we end up for enrollment in a given year, okay? So I'm just gonna put your eyes here for a second, but looking at 1920, in our January pupil count, again, everything all in, open enrollment in, out, we were at 1502, right? The year after, so this was kind of your COVID year, right? The year after took a big dip, which was not a surprise, right? And certainly not unique to Somerset. So we've kind of been trying to claw our way back, really from that year. So we're at 1502, 2021, as you can see, 1455, 21, 22, 1458, so like, a little bit, right? 1479 and 22, 23, and the January pupil count for 22, 20, or 23, 24 is 1487, okay? So obviously haven't reached back to where we were kind of pre-COVID, but the good news is, in a minute I'm going to talk about some news that isn't so great, right? But the good news is, just overall trends all in, is that our overall district enrollment continues to creep in the right direction, okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's a lot kind of here and broke it down a couple different ways, but at the end of the day, we don't want this number going backwards, it's creeping up. Yay, right? Good news, okay? Then I move on to kind of part 2 here. So open enrollment. So this is still where it's like, let's talk about it. And I'm putting this up here because I want to be very clear and very transparent that there are some pieces here that we need to talk about, and certainly some things we need to continue to talk about and monitor. But again, I want to kind of, there's a lot here, so let me just show you here, okay? So starting on this end, September open enrollment in, so students that are non-resident coming in, September open enrollment out. January open enrollment in, January open enrollment out. And you can see I use the same number of years from 1920 right on, okay? So if you put dollars attached to it, right, overall net, looking at where we were for 1920, kind of pre-COVID, right, this is where we need to get back to. This is positive, right? Ever since then, it's been trending in the wrong direction. And we'll talk a little bit about some kind of theories as to why, right? But if you look at just last year, for example, so kids coming into our district brought us this amount of money, right? Kids out, we have to pay this amount of money. So we end up 267 and some odd cents in the negative, right? Okay, this is on our website. This has been, you could find this right now if you went to our website. This isn't information that's been hidden, but something certainly that we continue to talk about internally, continue to kind of brainstorm around some, again, not only what's the why, but what are some things that we can do to address it, and things that I would love to be able to work together with this board of like, what are some ideas? Because this is, if you think about some of the things we've talked about with budgeting and things like that, this becomes a significant dollar amount, right? And how do we reverse that trend, okay? I'm gonna push pause. A lot on this slide, but questions? I can't tell if that, is that a question?
Well, I can't see that very well.
Oh, what can't you
Is that
see?
267,000?
Yeah.
But the one up on the top is 104,000? So you have cents up on the top, but none of the bottoms?
Because there weren't any.
Okay,
There weren't any other than this one,
okay.
right
got
there.
it.
Yep. Okay, keep going here. So this is the exact same information that I presented to the board in March, but just want to kind of bring it back a little bit as we're having some conversations about open enrollment. So these are students that we get into our district, right? Non-resident students. So last year, and of course I don't have the data yet for this coming school year, but last year, just to kind of acclimate you to kind of where I'm at here, we brought in 81 students from the New Richmond School District. We brought in 32 from Osceola, in 10, right? Kind of makes sense, for a total of 129. And these are the students that are going out. So we're bringing in 81 from New Richmond, and 71 are leaving. Make sense?
For New Richmond.
Yes. Yep, for New Richmond. I guess I'm kind of out of order here, but Osceola, we get 32 from Osceola, and we have 9 Somerset residents leaving for Osceola, right? I won't go through it all, you kind of get where I'm at. But this one, if you remember, you know, I kind of combined the variety of virtual programs that people are leaving for, which accounts for 36, but you can kind of see last year, and again, I will bring you the more updated information when we have it, but We had 129 students come in and 165 leave. We need that trend to reverse, okay? Again, same information that I presented before. So as we've been calculating data, tracking data in terms of our students out in particular. So of the 165 students last year that were leaving Somerset, 118 of them have never attended our school district. Most of the time that's due to living on a border, following where their parents and siblings have went. It might be due to parent jobs. It could be a wide variety of reasons, right? 31 have left due to family choice, lack of daycare, potentially mental health, physical health, variety of reasons in terms of the why there. And then 16 were dissatisfied with the school district. Okay, just to kind of quantify a little bit of the 165, kind of what's the why. A little bit more relevant information. So last year, we had 75 of our resident students attending St. Anne's, so JK through grade 8. And then 39 resident families accessing homeschooling. So that's not 39 students, that's 39 families, so that number is actually a little bit higher, right? And we've known that this percentage is increasing. Again, that's happening statewide, not necessarily just in Somerset, but something to be aware of. Many of those students do attend Somerset for portions of the day. Financially, we do get some of that money back, but looking for ways to continue to partner with our homeschooling population as well. The other thing I want to talk about, which I don't talk about a ton, but just bringing a little bit of information, again, about how this impacts us financially, looking at private school voucher programs. So not as popular in this area of the state. It's really heavy, Milwaukee, Racine, those kinds of things. But we do have families in Somerset that do access private school vouchers. So I gave a little bit of explanation of kind of what the parental choice programming is. Students have to be a resident of Wisconsin. There are some income limits that families have to meet in order to qualify. And it just talks about kind of next steps there. But I just want to mention, so for last school year, the Somerset School District had $76,733 reduced from our state aid due to vouchers, okay? The interesting thing to know that I don't think a lot of people understand is that we actually then are allowed, and every district does this, to increase our revenue limit. So for the district, it actually becomes a wash. We aren't out this money, but it ends up negatively impacting the taxpayers because that's where it comes from. So when you hear people talk about voucher programs and those kinds of things, these are the things that they're talking about. And this looks very different district to district, even in our area. There are some large schools around us that don't have any families accessing this. There are smaller schools around us that are 3 times this number. It just really kind of depends on families and choice and those kinds of things, but more of just kind of an informational piece there in terms of private school vouchers. Okay, so last thing I have on this, again, some of these things you've heard me talk about, but looking at what are some strategies for talking about enrollment. So we've talked a lot about the referendum component, and that was one of the big components that we talked about when bringing the referendum forward, knowing that we were one of the only districts that thought a performing arts center, the track, kind of go down your list, right? And feeling really strongly that that will continue to keep people here and hopefully bring additional people in. You've heard me talk about some open enrollment campaign stuff. I've sent out surveys, sent out brochures. There's some things that we're going to tackle again in the fall and kind of keep that messaging going of kind of the why Somerset. So something that I just did a couple weeks ago for the first time, which was fantastic, I was asked to come in and speak to a group of local realtors that were putting up a house for sale. So there was about 22 or 23 realtors there. Many of them not from Somerset, many of them from Stillwater, Hudson, the cities, kind of all over. And I spent about 10 or 15 minutes talking to them about our district and sharing the great things that we do and who we are. Brought them all kinds of brochures and all kinds of things to get more people kind of talking about as they're selling homes in Somerset, the great things that we do here, and how we can create some partnerships there, which was awesome. You're going to hear me talk in a couple minutes about a proposed on-site district-operated child care center, so I'll kind of push pause on that until I talk about that. I meet frequently with people from the village, developers, builders, economic development committee, just to kind of hear about what are you hearing from families that are looking to build here? What questions are you getting? How can I help give you information to help answer questions? Just to kind of find out some of the feedback in terms of why people might be choosing Somerset, or maybe why they're choosing a different district to build or buy a home. You've heard me talk about our virtual program. More work needs to be done there, because as I said, the numbers kind of been holding steady. That necessarily hasn't increased, but if we've got 36 students that are currently accessing another virtual program, what are some other things that we can do to help keep those kids in-house? And the last thing that I think is just a really good reminder of, this is rhetorical of course, but thinking about how board members, staff, stakeholders, how are we speaking about promoting and being champions of the district? What we have on social media matters. How we talk about it to your neighbors matters. If we aren't being our biggest champions, it's going to be hard to convince people to be a part of what we're doing and buy homes here and build homes here. So I continue to encourage every community member to think about how you're talking about our district on social media. Are we perfect? No. I mean, you can find lots of negative things, I'm sure, about the district, but man, we're trying hard. We believe in what we're doing, so good time to maybe hit a reset and thinking about what we're talking about. So lots of enrollment information.
Can you
Good
go back
news,
to
but
Can you go back to St. Anne's? What do you typically see come in? So they're there till 8th grade, so 9th grade. What do you typically see per year?
It varies. So class sizes for them, and I'm not a St. Anne's expert, but have been getting smaller. So this year, trying to remember off the top of your head, I want to say 4 or 5.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, which is about
That's
typical,
about the
I would
average.
say.
Okay.
Mhm.
But not all the kids who go to St. Anne's are in our district. So I remember several years ago, we had a parent come to one of our board meetings who live in Osceola, but sent their kid to St. Anne's and wanted to be able to open enroll, I don't remember if it was a son or a daughter, in our school district. And at that time, we didn't have the room. And because he lived in Osceola,
Got it.
he had to go to the Osceola School District.
And they may choose to go to a private high school or, something like that. So, and I would say, 4 to 6 or 7 has been, 7's probably high now, but typically.
Okay.
So I was going to ask about the revamping of the virtual program.
Yep.
So to maximize that, so that we can get that income in here, counted as actually enrolling in school, does that necessarily mean that you would have to hire teachers for that? Or could you do 1099 teachers off campus, or
Yeah,
how
I think,
would that work?
I know, good question, because we've run through a variety of scenarios of what can we support, budgetarily, but also asking families, literally like, why are you not accessing this virtual program? What are you seeing someplace else that we don't have that's drawing you to XYZ program? And I don't remember if it was this board that I said this to, so I'll just say it if it's a repeat, sorry, but some virtual programs that people access have a much lower credit requirement for graduation. So for some families, that's attractive enough where they don't have to take as many electives. So that's been enough of a pull. Some of it's been the live teachers, for sure. We've done a couple, collaborative conversations with Wisconsin Rural Virtual Program. I know many of our homeschool families use that program as well, so that takes about a year or so to get up and running. But I think at this point, thinking as creatively as possible, or at least some baby steps toward some of those things, is something that I think we seriously need to consider to try to pull. Now, as soon as I say that, and again, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I think we just had at least 5 or 6 students return to Somerset for this coming year that were accessing a variety of virtual programs. Great news. I don't know the why, right, yet, but I think, it's almost 2025. I think with our virtual program, we knew when we started it that, it was kind of born out of necessity through COVID and all those kinds of things. And we need to up the game a little bit to be able to kind of grab some of those people back or prevent them from leaving in the first place. So
it would probably take some kind of an investment on our part and then try to get the financial gain. So it's a little bit of a risk, but at the same time,
Yep.
there could be some.
Yeah, I would say that's
gain.
fair. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you have any idea at this point in time what the initial investment might be for that Wisconsin rural, whatever you called it?
Yeah, so that setback wasn't necessarily, well, part of it was a little bit of financial, but it was the structuring of the program that we were trying to wrap our head around, because it's very, very different than what we do now, in a good way. But trying to figure out our capacity with Brandon Berry, kind of doing what he's doing now, how do we move some of the pieces to be able to free him up, because it's gonna take someone officially dedicated to navigating that program. Brandon currently, last year, was, mostly in the high school library, so there's a few things that I just didn't feel like we're quite in a great space to do yet until we were able to figure out budget for the end of this year. We're in a good spot. So kind of with that, before I forget, so next meeting, Dave will be here, we'll give a formal recommendation for compensation. And then we'll be able to kind of talk about a few of these other components that we've been talking about for a year. Of if there is some additional money left over, what are those priorities? I've talked about some of the priorities already, right, in terms of staffing and getting some of those class sizes down to be a little bit more manageable, but we've also had some bigger conversations of some additional support and some programming and things like that, that, it just comes down to, we probably can't do it all, but we'd like to be able to do some, so. Any more questions for right now about enrollment?
Yeah. Could we get information about in and out per building?
Yeah, sure. Yep. You just want to jot it down, yeah. Thank you. So, overall, right, kind of the cliff notes, enrollment trending in the right direction. Need to continue to have some good conversations about the open enrollment piece, for sure. Okay? Okay, moving on.
She's got it pulled up for you.
Oh, okay. What did I have next? Strategic plan? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
You're good. We're gonna do this. All right. Sorry, as I said, you're hearing a lot of me tonight. So, this one I think I'll be able to move through a little bit quicker, because most of this information is information you've seen, you've heard. Just kind of putting a bow on the end of 2023-24 in terms of our action steps for the strategic plan, and then kind of outline the action steps that we will tackle for the coming school year. Shouldn't be new. Mission, core values, and learner outcomes. Again, everything we do kind of ties back to these three things in particular. We talk about this with staff all the time. New staff will get a big dose of this from me tomorrow. I'm excited about that. Again, these shouldn't be new. Our 4 pillars. What are we committing to for student, staff, operations, and involving our community in what we've got going on here. Not new. So what you see in yellow were the action steps for this school year. This is all information that you as a board have seen. Nothing on here has been added necessarily. Was that? No. Okay. So I'm not going to talk about each of these bullets, because again, these are things that you've heard me talk about, you've seen. Looking at enhancing some of the programs we already had in place, looking at getting some student voice. You've heard Trent and some of the principals reference that. Some equity audits that we were required to do, so the timing worked out pretty nicely with that. So that was for students. Looking at staff, again, you've heard me talk about the rounding process that we did, looking at themes, trends, action steps that we are putting into place for this school year. You've heard me talk about district wellness team and some of the different things that the wellness team has done, which has been great. Stop me if I'm going too fast, but I want to honor your time because we've seen a lot of this. So referendum project, so obviously that's ongoing. I put some timelines on here in terms of, you've heard Eric and Margaret Johnson talk about kind of where we are. Officially tomorrow starts the Performing Arts Center, so I hope a year from now I'm standing in front of you and bragging about how wonderful our completed Performing Arts Center is. But that'll be just a little bit of an ongoing goal. Compensation plans, so Dave and I will present our formal recommendation for compensation at the next meeting. So more information to come about that, which will be great. And then you've heard me in a wide variety of ways talk about developing strategies for increasing district revenues. So I'm going to talk about a child care proposal in just a minute. We just talked a little bit about the virtual program, open enrollment, continuing to analyze enrollment, and how can we better utilize some funds such as Fund 80. All things that we've kind of talked about. Parent engagement survey, so I linked it here. Again, I will attach this to the agenda. I was still working on it like right up until this meeting. Do you want to click on it just for me real quick? Oh. Perfect. So this will be on the agenda. If you're watching the meeting, you'll have access to this too. I'm not, again, just in order of time, I'm not going to go through every single one here, but you can see we had 345 people respond to the survey. All of the survey questions are here. You'll be able to see the responses. These are things that we have went through and kind of digested administratively. We haven't even brought these back to the buildings yet, so these will be some conversations we'll have throughout the month of September, really kind of talking about where are some action steps and some areas that we want to celebrate, and some areas that our parents are saying like, hey, I wonder if we can get a little bit better, right? So again, you can see all the questions and all the results. So like this one, I know how well my child is doing academically in school. A 1 represents strongly disagree, 3 was neutral, and a 5 was strongly agree. And it's the same scale for every single question. Okay? I'm just going to kind of scroll so you can kind of see a little bit, right? How often do you check Infinite Campus? I have at least one teacher or staff member I feel comfortable contacting when I have an idea or a concern. I feel confident in my ability to support my child learning at home. I feel welcome in my child's school. I trust the staff administrators at my child's school. They can see this. My school encourages feedback from me, so this is one that as an admin team we flagged that we need to kind of think about, dive into, what does that look like? How are we currently getting feedback? How often are we getting feedback? It might look a little bit different in each building, of course, but this is, we didn't love this. We want this to be inverted a little bit. So this is one that we flagged. I feel my child has a sense of belonging at their school. Teacher staff work closely with me to meet my child's needs. So this is another one that we flagged. I mean, not necessarily bad, but just wanted to try and find out some more information. What might that mean? Again, what does that look like in each of the buildings? How are we currently doing this now? Are there any entry points to just simply be better at what we're doing? Teacher staff of the school treat parents as partners in educating children. See that? I feel my input is valued by the school. We flagged this one as well, just to kind of think more about what does that mean. Getting some more information. So some of these things might be like a follow-up survey. Teacher staff work hard to build trusting relationships with families. Teacher staff really try to understand family struggles and concerns. Almost done here. The 3 best ways you prefer to receive information. So other respondents, people still say email seems to be the best way that they like to hear from us. Texting and the scoop. One thing that I didn't, well, you can see this question about the scoop, right? It's sent to all families every week. When it comes to the scoop, I read it every week, I read it occasionally, or I don't read it. What I didn't put here was an open-ended question. Those of you that took it might remember was, what are some improvements or feedback you have about the scoop? The list was awesome, lengthy, many common themes. So Alicia and I have sat down and talked about it a little bit, but we'll be adjusting some things that we do with the scoop, including the day of the week that we send it. Many people felt like Friday was not the best day of the week, which is like, oh, that makes sense. It kind of gets lost in the weekend. So looking at maybe a Monday or a Tuesday, but that isn't on here because it was all kinds of comments. But more information to come about how we're going to update the scoop. Questions or concerns are resolved in an appropriate way. I feel my child's teacher is available when I need to talk to them. I'm getting to the end here. A couple questions about how often teachers or adults at school are contacting parents to share information about academic progress. Sharing positives about your child's academics and/or behavior. Sharing concerns about your child's academics or behavior. How often have you volunteered in your child's classroom? So physically going into a specific classroom and volunteering, so you can kind of see where we are here. How often have you volunteered in your child's school? So that might be different events or field trips, not necessarily in a specific classroom. When it comes to cell phone use by students during the school day, I support 3 options there, having unlimited access, restricted access, or no access at all. You can kind of see where families landed there. This question I'm going to talk about a little bit later, but a question about having an on-site daycare. I put this here because I accidentally left it as required, that if you fill this out, you had to answer this question. So there's many families, I'm sure, that daycare is not even in their world right now, right? But more to come on this one when I talk about my 3rd presentation for the night. And these 2 were elementary specific, gathering some information for some other things we have to kind of track regarding Title I, family engagement. So asking about what activities people attended throughout the year, and some activities that people might be interested in down the road. So this is linked to the presentation, which will be linked on the agenda, so you can access it, check it out, look at it. For us, this is not a one and done. Again, administratively, we've had multiple conversations about it. Thinking about some next steps, talking with staff about specifically some of the areas that I mentioned that we flagged. So, all right. Okay, so that kind of wrapped up 23-24. And now moving into what are our focus areas going to be for 24-25. So starting with students. So you can look at the strategy up on top, and this is the action step underneath it. So engage students in educational programming that reflects personalizing their learning. So we are going to work with staff, with students on a variety of ways through authentic performance tasks and assessments that they can measure growth and mastery of content. So this really is about thinking differently about, other than a 50-page multiple choice test, how else can we give kids access to demonstrating their learning in a variety of ways? It's almost 2025. Worksheets are fine. But in what other ways can we encourage students to think bigger and show us what they know? Providing opportunities for authentic community, career, and college experiences for local and greater community. So again, continuing to foster local, state, national, and world partnerships for post-secondary options. So a lot of this certainly happens at the high school, but also thinking bigger about what are some other ways that we can infuse this into middle school, elementary school. Many things are done right now, but how do we continue to build on some of those partnerships and kind of zeroing in on what students want to do after they leave us. And then 1.3, support the social emotional learning, character development, and mental health of all students. So create a multi-level support system to promote student well-being. So you heard Sarah earlier talk about kind of that academic triangle. We also have something that we work from in terms of student behavior, mental health, again, overall well-being, kind of what does that level of support look like? We have lots of students that walk through our doors with lots of needs, and how do we support those students? What does that look like? What supports do we have in place? We felt like this was a nice partner with this action step of expanding some of the partnerships that we have with the county and the state to be able to bring more resources to support students and their families when students need added support, and we have lots of students and families that do. All right, looking at our staff. So looking at our professional development and gathering feedback from staff regarding professional development days, the time that we spend, how it's structured, what we are providing professional development on, getting that feedback regarding, again, their satisfaction, are they able to apply the different learning, and then using that data to be able to better tailor and better structure our PD so that it's relevant and meaningful for our staff. Providing meaningful collaborative experiences throughout the year. So we have the great gift of being on one campus. How do we leverage that at an even higher level? So have lots of vertical conversations with 512 math and K-12 English and all of those kinds of things to be able to continue to build on the great things that we're doing here. 2.2, expanding data literacy to meet the current and future needs of our students. So some of this work for this first one has already been started. So looking at unit plans, assessments, and instruction, and really diving into those from a data lens. I know that the data retreat that happened with the building so far, they've started this work, but really kind of bringing to life the use of the tools that we have to look at data at a higher level than we currently do as a general statement. We have beautiful tools to be able to bring us all kinds of information and reports, and how do we use that to be able to make it meaningful and impact the needs of our students. The second one, provide professional development focused on assessment and the use of the data assessments provided to impact instruction. So as we're developing our professional development, we are going to be focusing on assessment. You can see we have that here as well. There's some obvious tie-ins. Again, to really kind of think about how are we assessing students, how do we prepare students for state assessments is certainly one component, but not the only component. And how do we provide teachers tools to be able to do that and think a little bit differently than just your generic worksheet. All right, under operations, so looking at communication plans. One action step, complete an external communication audit for both family and community members. So really diving into when do people want communication? How do you want it? What do you want to be communicated about? We did a version of this with school perceptions years ago. It's been quite a while since we've had updated information, again, from not only just families and parents that have students here, but our greater community, to be able to update them on what's happening here, a little bit more connection about what's happening in our schools day to day. So look for that audit, which likely will involve some sort of a survey coming soon. And then under 3.2, ensure safe and secure facilities. So communicate comprehensive plans, procedures, and requirements for internal and external stakeholder facilities use. So this is something that was started last year. We have some additional areas we want to continue to build on, especially with our Performing Arts Center that's going to be completed, and we're going to have a lot more outside people coming in, using our spaces, using our areas, which is absolutely what we want. But how do we ensure that our facilities continue to be safe and secure when we're not only using it internally but externally as well? So. And the last one I have, looking at community. So strategy 4.1 was increase opportunities for family involvement. So we really wanted to zero in on ways to be able to welcome new students and families into our schools. There are certainly pockets of where that happens now, but how do we formalize that process? I'm thinking about, our elementary school alone, we have 53 new families that have enrolled their student with us. How do we make that initial contact with Somerset School District positive, memorable, where they're excited about being here? They tell their neighbors about, oh my gosh, you have to go to Somerset, right? So formalizing this a little bit in each of our buildings. And the last one, increase opportunities for community involvement. So promote the district as a community hub for the well-being of children, families, and the entire Somerset community. This one is a little difficult to measure, but when we were having these conversations, we feel really strongly that the school is the center and the heartbeat of our community. And how do we continue to promote that in a positive way? How do we come together with community leaders? How do we come together with a wide variety of stakeholders in the community to continue to kind of push out that narrative of the great things that are happening here? Not running from areas of improvement, of course, but continuing to kind of make this the center for the community. So these are 12 action steps. It's a lot of work. It's big work. We had 10 last year. As we were kind of talking about this at our retreat, last month, we were a little bit, maybe, I know, yep, we're going to do it.
I feel good.
I know, we were like, oh, is this too many? But a lot of these things are things we've maybe even partially started or just have a little bit more to go, so we feel good about it. You've heard me talk about the strategic plan is something that we live and breathe and we reference daily. Every board meeting, we're reading our mission. These are things that we really believe in that we feel like can move the needle in our district. So, more to come on strategic plan. Also next meeting, I will kind of share with you my superintendent goals for the year as well. Many of them are aligned to the strategic plan, which only makes sense, taking your feedback for my evaluation as well, looking at areas of focus for the coming year. Okay, one more. Here we go. I think that's the last one. Okay. All right, so want to bring you some information that we've been working on internally for just over a year. Really thinking about and trying to get creative around filling some needs that we know that we have in the district and frankly in the community. So I'm gonna bring to you our research, some information. Tonight it is literally just informational. You're not being asked to do anything other than just kind of take in the info, and we'll kind of talk about some next steps from there. But bring you information regarding a proposal of a district-operated child care center right here on our campus. So looking at bringing on a child care center where we would be able to bring in infants as young as 6 weeks all the way through age 3. And then we would continue our current before and after school age care program, our JK WRAP program. None of that would change. And the goal would be to be able to get this program up and running for the start of the 25-26 school year. Alignment to the strategic plan. So when we look at the plan, again, that really is our roadmap for kind of giving us permission to at least explore some of these things. As we look at how we strategically allocate resources to support student, staff, educational program and facilities, community interests, which this is a big one. One of those was developing strategies for increasing district revenue. We'll talk a little bit about that, about what that looks like and how this aligns to that proposal. Kind of small, so bear with me here. But what's the rationale? Basically, why are we doing this? Why are we talking about this? Why is this something we at least want you to kind of think about and consider? So as we have conversations about enrollment and long-term enrollment and retention, we feel like that this could fill a pretty big gap because we have information from families, not only current families, but even prospective families with little ones that are running into daycare struggles. As a result, they bring their small child to a daycare in Hudson, New Richmond, whatever it might be. And by the way that things kind of work, you know, once you have kids enrolled in some of those daycares and they start making connections and friendships, it becomes easier to leave kids in that school district, and now those students are attending Hudson and New Richmond instead of here. When we talk about district revenue, you're going to hear me talk in a few more slides. It's really thinking about the revenue side in terms of being able to retain families and students here and potentially bring in additional families through open enrollment. Okay? Recruitment and retention of district employees. I've had multiple staff talk to me about this option and opportunity. Is this something the district would ever think about? Because our staff struggle with finding daycare. Our staff struggle with the shortages, the waiting list, those kinds of things. And could be a very unique recruitment and retention tool that many districts around us wouldn't be able to offer, so it'd be something a little bit unique. In our community, we currently have a vital need for more childcare. We've had multiple childcare centers closed. We have currently 5 licensed daycares in our community. I have no way to track how many we have that are not licensed, so it's probably more than that. But I have heard over and over from people, again, people that live here, have small children that maybe don't go here yet, or have children that are would like to go here but are attending daycare someplace else, of we are running out of options in our own community, so what might that look like? We like the idea of having kind of a one-stop shop for parents, especially those that might have a student old enough for school-age care, but also a little one. Now you're not having to navigate multiple places, multiple drop-offs. You can drop off and pick up all in one spot, one program, one communication hub, one billing payment cycle, those kinds of things. We love the idea of giving families and students early access to resources, potentially interventions if a student would need that. We have nurses, counselors, therapists. Food service continues to be a big component in our community. How can we get people earlier access to some of those programs? And we feel like help set students up in a really positive way for school readiness. Being able to create tighter partnerships with families. Doing some things, again, proactively and earlier to help some of that school readiness, which doesn't necessarily mean learning to read at age 2, but some of those play skills and those kinds of things that we feel really good about being able to structure here. And we're really, really lucky that Leslie Thomas, who's our current director, has done all of this before. She has opened child care centers. She has a ton of experience being able to not only implement, but as I said, open and operate child care centers. That is one of the biggest reasons in talking to other school districts, like why aren't more people doing this, is the staffing component in terms of not having somebody like a Leslie Thomas to be able to take on this task, because it's a big task, no doubt. So we're lucky that we're able to do that. And then some of the staffing struggles that we face with school age care, because we've got a lot of split shifts. Right now, you might have a staff member that works from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. and then not again until 3 p.m. until 6 p.m. That's hard to kind of maintain for continuity of staffing and those kinds of things. Our staffing is amazing, but being able to alleviate some of those kind of constant turnover struggles by eliminating some of the split shifts. The list is probably longer, but these are at least some of the things that we felt were most important to be able to talk about. So as I mentioned, this isn't something we just put together last week. This is something we've been researching and talking about and connecting with people about for over a year. Lots of consultation with a variety of agencies, Department of Children and Families, Wisconsin Child Care Licensing, Child Care Partnerships, really to kind of get an understanding of what are the code requirements, what are the staffing ratios, what are the space calculations. You can't just kind of decide to open up a child care center and then have kids show up. There's a ton of components that go with that, especially when you are on a campus of a school. Our team, so between Leslie and 3 or 4 of her staff members, did 5 different site visits to other district-operated child care centers, one in Amory, Frederick, Luck, St. Croix Falls, and Unity, just to get an idea of what else are people doing, what are the rates they're charging, how do they structure it, what does that look like. We've been able to get some good information there. Tons of research on rates and fees. What does that look like? How do we make sure that we're, competitive but not pricing other businesses out of daycare in Somerset? Certainly not our goal, but making sure that we have some space to be able to be what I would consider comfortable and appropriate. Looking at staffing needs, what would that mean? Salary and benefits, what equipment would we need? Again, we don't own currently any cribs for 6-week-olds, right? So what would that look like, and how does that come into kind of the overall scheme, right? And then probably the biggest thing is construction. So our vision would be turning most of this building into the child care center, maintaining kind of all of the district office stuff, but all these other classrooms, and most of them now except one are already used for school age care, transitioning those into our child care center classrooms. But that would mean quite a bit of construction would have to happen to this building, which I'll talk about in a minute, to be able to meet code, exits, kind of all the things, right? So more to come on that. But that has been a ton of back and forth with Market Johnson, and I want to thank them because they've done it on their own goodwill of giving us lots of recommendations, prices, lots of things for us to think through because they've done some of this stuff before, which has been helpful. Determining food service options, so we would obviously have to feed a breakfast, a lunch, and a snack. We don't have a kitchen in this building, which is not a deal breaker. Many of these other districts have lunches and meals prepared in a different building and carted over, which we certainly could do. But again, as you might imagine, lots of rules and regulations around what that looks like, so how do we kind of navigate that? And I mentioned a high level of collaboration with Market Johnson, Wold, Taher, just to kind of figure out what might this be able to look like, okay? So you heard, that didn't transfer very well. So you heard me mention on our parent engagement survey, we asked this question. I was just curious what the result might be, that if people are like, man, I'm interested, or no thanks. This might be just a little bit skewed, as I said, because everybody had to answer this, right? But we did have 81 families that said, yes, I would be interested, and then 43 families that said, maybe, right? So just to give you a little bit of an idea of at least some of the data we've been able to collect of, is this something that people really truly are something that they would like us to look into and consider? Overview, if you're not familiar with Spartan Kids Club, this is current programming right now. This has not changed. We would not envision any of this changing. Looking at our before and after school care program, our wraparound care program for our JK students, then offering, when we don't have school, child care options there, and then our summer programming as well. Okay, so details, as I mentioned, some of the structure and construction. So we would have to update this building to be able to meet building codes to have a child care center with kids that little. We would use all of these classrooms that wrap around here, and really we've had some in-depth conversations with Market Johnson and licensing about occupancy, age of children per classroom, Fire protection, what does that look like? I mean, the list is fairly extensive. I'm giving you a very 50,000 foot view because obviously right now this building was not built to be set up for a small child care center, right? We would need quite a few startup items to be able to create an age-appropriate environment in each classroom. So as I mentioned, cribs, size-appropriate furniture for 2- and 3-year-olds. We currently don't have any of those things, right? Toys, learning materials. And I kind of mentioned a little bit too about some of the food options, what we would have to look like, what would it cost if we put a kitchen in versus, you know, carting some of the food over, those kinds of things. I realize, like I said, I'm giving you a very kind of 50,000 foot, which is a little bit intentional, because my goal for tonight is just to have you kind of marinate on this idea, and I'll kind of talk about next steps from there. But so again, you know, licensing. Literally, we copied and pasted the exact licensing details that we would have to live by. It's not DPI, right? It's way bigger than that. Looking at Department of Children and Family Services, they govern how many students you can have per square feet. Again, all the codes, all the construction things that would have to be put in place for us to be able to do this. Here's kind of a breakdown of what we would see in terms of maximum number of children that could be in this building at the same time. So I'm going to kind of break it down this way. So looking at our 6 weeks to a year, we could have 8. 1 year to 2 years, 8. 2 years to 2.5, 12. 2.5 to 3, 16. You can kind of see it just kind of keeps moving, right? And we already have our JK wrap program. So again, all of this is dictated by licensing. It's not just because we feel like it, right? There's all kinds of considerations that go into how many kids possibly at the very max could you have. If we had bigger spaces, these numbers would be able to increase, but based off of the square footage that we have, this is where the numbers are. We envision staffing, so for each classroom, 2 teachers, not necessarily that would be there at the same time, but if we're open from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., that's kind of a morning and an afternoon, if you will, right? And then 1 assistant in each classroom as well. All right, so let's talk about the costs. Okay, so I want to stress that these are estimates. These are not in stone. These would be subject to change one way or the other, higher or lower a little bit, but at least giving you a general idea based off of our multiple conversations with Market Johnson and Wold in particular of what might this look like to even kind of think about starting something like this. So this would be something that would need to be run through Fund 80, okay? It meets all the criteria because there's obviously a heavy community benefit to something like this existing on our campus. All right, so looking at startup costs. So year 1 would be a one-time cost. So a one-time cost of $600,000 to do complete construction and remodel, right? That is an overtime, right, year after year. One-time cost. We need to put a fence around our playground. That's a one-time cost, that little tiny playground out there, of around $13,000, again, estimates, right? And all of the stuff that we would need to accommodate 6-week-old through age 3, classroom furnishings, equipment, materials, and things I kind of mentioned, estimating at about $62,000, okay? So year 1, Fund 80 levy, right, again, this is just a proposal, right, would be $675,000. And then I kind of broke it down to kind of what would that look like for tax impact and mill rate. Year 1. Remember, today I just want you marinating, right? Just kind of thinking, more to come. But we feel like this is a pretty comfortable estimate based off of all the information that we've gathered, okay? This is a one-time Fund 80 cost at this amount, right? Year 2, so after year 1, then we would really only be looking at Fund 80 for the ongoing operational costs, right? Because we'd already have all this stuff done. So the big chunk of the cost of something like this would come in year 1 through Fund 80, right? Year 2 then looking at the ongoing operational, so that levy would be much smaller. So looking at staffing, we estimate at 800, 600, right? Oh my gosh, you're with me. Supplies, 10,000, food service, okay? All of those would be ongoing costs, again, estimates. And then we take a look at what would our estimated revenue be. So these are the fees that we would collect. This does not include the other component of revenue, which you have to think a little bit differently, of families that we keep and families that we bring in, right? I can't quantify that on this slide right now, right? But in talking to all the other districts and things that kind of do this, I mentioned the 5 that we visited, this is kind of the big selling point, right? All of that into effect, right? Then looking at the Fund 80 levy after that, this would be kind of that ongoing piece would be estimated at this amount, okay? So kind of year 1, bigger chunk to get everything going and started. Year 2 and after would be then looking at the operational costs, which would be settled around this dollar amount. Okay? All right, so next steps, I just need you to just marinate, right? Next steps, we'll bring this back again the next meeting. I'm not even looking for formal approval at the next meeting, but at the next meeting, Dave and Leslie will be here as well. Leslie was on a trip, so she couldn't be here today. And that'll give you a couple weeks to at least kind of think about what questions might you have, what else would be helpful to dive further. Send me an email of like, hey, can you maybe have this ready for the August 19th meeting if you have questions about this. You might be sitting here loving it, hating it, that's okay. My goal today was just at least bring you the information that we've been working on for a long time. We think there's real benefit to something like this coming to our district for all the reasons I've explained. But obviously there's some components here to think about, right? Another thing we're talking about with Fund 80, for sure. Okay? So, not that I don't want to take questions, but what I want you to do is just take it in, okay? You have access to this, email me questions, and then we can revisit it next meeting, okay?
So this is going to be attached to the agenda?
It will be, yep. Okay? All right, you have to be tired of hearing me speak at this point, so let me, what else do I got here? All right, I can sit down for, this next one's quick, I promise.
Yeah, Champion, August 19th.
What did I say?
Second.
Oh, yeah, we'll fix that. Oh, I didn't write down 22nd. Okay. So underneath my report, if you're looking at 8G, so every year we need to have our district physician review these policies, take a look at if she recommends any changes, anything that she wants us to kind of bring back to the board and discuss. She recommended no changes, didn't see anything that needed to be changed. She felt all looked good. So we can bring these back to the next meeting unless you have questions, and we'll formally approve them. But these are written in our policies that we have to do this every year. So, and there have been times where she's given some recommendations. But as for these this time around, she said they look okay.
I'd just say on 8450, I think we need to revisit that just based on that has a lot to do with COVID and masking. And I think we need to evaluate the board taking that back. As far as a decision to do anything like masking. So that's just a thought for further discussion.
So do you guys want that like on the next work session to talk about, or
Yeah,
what would be helpful?
What are you looking for, Steve?
Well, should the policy committee look at it and compare it to what's other people doing, and then bring it back to a work session and kind of take it back to policy committee first?
I don't think we need to do that. I think, just actually discussing it again at the next work session, I think that'd be appropriate.
Are you talking about a specific item in here?
Yeah, the authority to mask. Going back to the board as a whole.
So can you give us a paragraph that you're looking at? Because you said 8450, right?
Right.
Well, do you want to just bring it back to the next work session and bring your thoughts and
I
then,
think so, yeah.
rather than trying to read through it now?
Yeah.
Well, don't know that there's anything in there.
And I'd have to read it again. I don't really want to read it. We're sitting here right now in the meeting, so I can bring it back and
We'll throw
we all have
it-
the opportunity to read it.
Yeah, Alicia, you want to throw that on?
Well, before we make a decision on this, can you remind us of what the law is requiring? These have to be reviewed annually. Is there a deadline by which they need to be accepted?
I don't think we had a deadline, it just needed to be done. We've typically always made sure it's done before the start of the school year. I mean,
Okay.
but I think we're maybe talking two different things, like the policy indicates that our physician looks at it, so the physician isn't recommending anything.
Right.
Okay, but the board wants to bring that back. So I think we've met what I need in terms of policy, then if you guys want to talk about 8450 and make changes, great. But I think, does that make sense?
We can move on as is for now.
Okay. So September work session.
So theoretically then, according to what you just said, Matt, we could approve these at our next meeting and still bring 8450 to the work session for review.
Yeah, if the board wants to review it, yeah.
Okay.
But still approve it next month or next meeting and it
Yeah.
moves on, we're all good. And then we look at it.
I feel more comfortable with that.
Okay, yeah.
All right, any other questions? Okay, thanks for that, Shannon. Policy review, item 9, so 5610.01. I guess we'd have to review that every year. I think this is what we have done in the past, correct?
Yeah, sorry, I just had to
This
pull it up
situation.
here really quick.
So is there any reason this isn't put, because all the other ones have to do with health in the school?
Yep,
Okay.
yeah, we try to separate them out.
Otherwise it could've.
Yeah, because of Alicia's amazing policy work,
Yeah.
we're finding all kinds of things that are required annually and things that, to be frank, just maybe have been missed or haven't been done, right? So we've been trying to keep them separate so that when we look back, which we do often, of like, oh, what was last, July or August, we kind of have it straight. So, so 5610.01 is something that's reviewed annually by the board prior to the start of the school year and either needs to be readopted or repealed. I am honestly not sure if this has been done before, so this might be the first time it's officially coming back annually.
But this is how we handle it.
This is 100% how we handle it. I think just we're trying to meet what the policy says of making sure we do it annually. So we wouldn't recommend any changes. It's just part of something we have to do every year, and today was just review, and we'll bring it back next meeting if anybody has any questions, so.
So no changes to it, this is
Correct.
the policy we use.
Yep.
We're just readopting it.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, next item, formation of advisory committee. Steve, we'll just put this one to you.
Yeah, I don't want to take too much time. I think it's a positive thing. There's interest from the business community of working with the schools, and my proposal and thought on this is we can have 3 or 4 business leaders that are involved in looking at curriculum opportunities as well as student-run businesses. Partnering with our principal, superintendent, the curriculum director, and just all sitting together, trying to come up with different ideas on how to work with the business community that could only help. Shannon was talking about thinking outside the box. I think this is something that would be helpful. I know she's talked to SNC, I've talked to them too. And that's just one thriving business in town, and I think this would be a positive thing for our enrollment, something that we could offer that maybe other schools don't. So, I just wanted to get the discussion going, and the business opportunity committee for advisory committee, I think is a good one to start with if we're using that advisory committee.
Any other comments or questions?
So you're recommending that we start an advisory
Correct.
And you're suggesting, well, we just passed a policy about this, right? Advisory committee,
Correct.
just a month. So it's not in our active policies because Neola hasn't updated that yet. But if I remember correctly, that policy had a lot of criteria in it. And it seemed to me like one of the criteria was that it be a majority of community members. Does this sound familiar to anybody?
You're talking about parents?
It
Well, I'm
doesn't, it
gonna
can't be
have to-
less than a majority.
Right.
Yeah, that the majority of the committee would have to be community members. And what you were just suggesting was 3 or 4 business leaders
Mhm.
with 3 or 4 of our staff, which would not be a majority.
Well, yeah, but you can also obviously have 5 parents on there, right?
So you're talking about making it more than businesses, including parents as well?
Sure.
Put it together, sure.
Well, it also
Head it up.
says it has to have a very specific
Goal.
Right.
written guidelines and goals. So if we were going to do that,
We need to have
you
a
would
lot.
have to present that for
Right.
approval.
I don't have any problem doing that.
Does it need to be an advisory committee?
Doesn't make sense. I mean, they're giving advice to the board, new ideas.
What you're describing could be gone over and presented to the board, couldn't it?
Yeah, but you're not gonna have as much involvement. If you have everybody sitting at a table for 3 or 4 sessions over a 3-month period. It's gonna be,
So who drafts the specific intent of that advisory committee?
it'd be the board.
So when will we do that? Because if we draft the intent, do you then solicit volunteers to be on it?
I'd have to read the policy, I don't even remember exactly what the specifics are, but what is the policy number? I mean,
I don't know.
9140.
Yeah, I mean, I think if someone has a specific intent that they want to use this committee for, I think come back to the work session with it. And, you know,
With the details.
with the details and tie them to the policy. And then we as a board can decide, yeah, let's move forward. And then the next step would be even figuring out if we can even get enough people to be on that committee. But I don't have a problem. I mean, if there's an intent that somebody wants to present, let's do it.
This maybe is more for Trent or Shannon, but are similar things, correct me if I'm wrong, already happening like that within the high school?
So we have our school store that runs with, where it's a student-run business within our school. But we're always looking for opportunities to partner with our local businesses, and we've had different opportunities in the past and want to continue to grow those opportunities for sure. And I think about like our School to Work program, or, and I know that's not a student business per se, but there's real life skills that'll extend, that'll help students while they're here at in Somerset High School, but beyond with apprenticeship programs and things of that nature where we are partnering and would want to continue to grow
Right,
those.
so we do have a basis with some of those things already.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think understanding what the intent of that advisory committee is, and then we have the same conversation next work session, or 2, whatever it may be, to figure out what are we doing already, how does it apply to that intent? I mean, maybe there's just a lack of communication that we don't even know. But if there's a gap, then we figure out how to fill that gap.
Right. And if you have 3 or 4 businesses sitting at the same table, it's different than working individually with just one at a time, where they will be able to collaborate and come up with some different ideas. Well, you could do this, we could do that, you know, just collaboration.
Okay, so it sounds like we're gonna move it to our next work session.
Sounds
We're gonna have some information.
Yeah.
Some write-up. that we
I should be
could-
able to get some info for you.
And then if we can get it ahead of time, we can maybe get it.
Anyone else like
we get ahead of time, we get to Trent and possibly reach out to, what they're doing right now as well.
Well, I think the purpose of that next meeting, though, would be to identify the intent of the advisory committee, apply it to the policy, without anybody else being involved, bring it back to the board and say, hey, board, do we want to move forward? And then if we want to move forward, then you start engaging those that would apply. But I think let's if someone has an intent for this committee, then apply
You're
the policy.
talking about, you're gonna take care
If anybody wants to, I mean,
Jump
of it.
in.
Is there collaboration on it, or?
Absolutely.
you got a month, I mean, put it on the agenda for a month from now.
Yep.
Whoever comes with things, great. If nobody's ready, okay, it's still on the agenda, we just move it to the next month, it's not a big deal.
Good idea. Anything else on that? Anybody? Okay, good discussion. Next one was a once around the table discussion. We talked about this last time about adding this section back onto the agenda. Probably should have pushed it to this one, but we talked about last time. But does anybody want to make a motion on this or have further discussion if you want to move forward with this item?
Well, what do you mean move forward? You mean adding this back to our agenda?
Yeah.
Well, I would recommend that we don't, based on the legal advice that we've been given.
I would agree. I think our last meeting, we talked about it. I mean, I think it's a good idea in concept to bring things up, but there's that slippery slope of suddenly we have too much conversation on a non-agenda item. I think we have a good process in place. If somebody wants something on the agenda, unless somebody here feels like that it's not accommodating to them.
Is there a way we can restate it to like board comments and then maybe like a board member who wants to bring something up could have something linked to the agenda so people could see? But if there's something, well, I suppose that'd be the same as getting something on the agenda.
Yeah, adding that to the agenda. But Steve reached out on this other item for the business, when we put it on, it would fall in that procedure.
I would like the procedure though, that when that is sent out to the board, that all board members are blind copied. I think that's what we've always traditionally said, but I know that there has been some that I've been aware of that I think have gone to some people of the board that I wasn't included on. So I do ask that, I think we have to keep that consistent to blind copy all members of the board.
So when you do blind copy, you're kind of doing the same thing as putting it on an agenda at the end of the meeting.
No, when you blind copy, you're saying, I would like to bring this agenda item to the next meeting. Will anybody second? And that's all you're asking for is a second. There's no opportunity for discussion.
But it's the same thing you can do here at the end of a board meeting. There's no reason why you couldn't do that.
Because in the past, it has led to conversation, which is a violation of open meeting laws.
Same thing could happen to the BCC too.
Then put at the top, this is informational only, please respond only to me.
So I guess, does anybody want to make a motion on this?
I'll make a motion to add it to the ones around the table. Motion to add agenda items.
Is there a second? Okay, any further discussion? All right, I'll take a roll call vote. Liz, yes, or you?
No.
Lori?
No.
Ian?
No.
Steve?
Yes.
Matt?
No.
Danny? Yes. Bruce? No. Okay, motion failed. Getting off the agenda. All right.
Bruce, can I go back? I clarified one thing with the policies that I had underneath my report. And Steve, I think the one you were asking about was actually 8450.01, which is the personal protective equipment during pandemic, epidemic events.
Yeah, it could be 0.01. I looked at 8450.
Okay, I just want to say it out loud to make sure that's
Sure.
the one that we'll bring back, because the
Yes.
other one wasn't about masking. This is the one about
That's
masking.
why I said
Okay.
there was nothing in there about masks.
Yeah.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we brought the right one back. Okay.
Thanks, Shannon. All right, next item, board development, survey results. I linked We linked policy 0144.5 to the agenda just to kind of update, everyone review. That's a lot of item about how boards should act, behave, work together. And we've talked about board development a few different times. I've been kind of trying to figure out how to go through both board development and this policy, just to kind of get my thoughts on it and other people's thoughts. I think we've struggled with this policy. I think there's a lot of specific examples of ways that we have gone against this policy. I have a list of them. I think people on this board know. I mean, decisions being undermined on social media, coming out of meetings, and going on social media and not being in support of the board, or
When I'm in the minority, I'm gonna say I'm going to explain why I voted the way I did.
and we speak as one voice as a board, and we make a motion, and and these are why I'm asking them to do some board development, because I don't think that's healthy for a board. It's not healthy to have some board members go out and now say, I don't like what this board did, and now there's a divide. And we are together, and we need to be together for this whole community, not undermine decisions that have been made. We don't need comments that state we need more conservatives on the board. We don't need comments on social media throwing other board members under the bus. I don't think that needs to keep happening. And we can't have comments at board meetings where we're only speaking to certain board members. We can't speak to just the men or women in the room. We can't make light of a Me Too movement. That's not what Somerset needs to be known for. That's not how this community wants to be known for. Okay? Because that gets around that those are things that are happening in our meetings. And I don't think that's appropriate. I mean, we have to come on common ground on items. I think following best practice, right, again, in our policy about reaching out to WASB, using CISA, using our attorney for recommendations, having conversations at the board table about these things, I think is important.
Are you saying to only use those resources?
No, I'm an example, like those ones to say that we don't support those or we don't think they're giving good advice. To me, that's who we reach out to.
Well, then we need to add some other ones to the list.
Okay, and I'm open to adding some other things, but to go right out and say that I don't believe what WASB says, or I don't believe what CISA, or I don't believe what our attorney says, that's the person keeping our school from being sued or lawsuits or, helping us. I mean, we're paying that person to give us their best recommendation. It's up to us as a board, off of their recommendation, and then I will say, I wanna, like, the open meeting law violations, again, that's something that happens almost every board. When the new board turns over, people are emailing, and I think we kinda got that one taken care of right away, but that's something that happens, to your point, like the open meeting law is a big item. And then, when we come to these meetings, coming with an open mind, with not our minds already made up, I think is huge. And I will say, and this is probably gonna bite me, but when we go on podcasts and webinars, and we put ourselves out there that we have already made up our mind on a decision before our board has even discussed it, is not a healthy board. That is not how a healthy board operates.
I was very careful and very clear that was not happening. I gave my own independent research I did not speak for the board. I told that.
When there are links with the name of Danny Erickson, Somerset school board member, coming to this, I'm talking to Somerset school board member, Danny Erickson. To me, that's not a healthy board. And if our board wants to say, yeah, that's okay, we're good with that, okay, that's fine. But from the development that we've had, I don't think that's how healthy boards operate, because that is already stating when you come to this meeting, your mind is made up and you're not open to conversations to work together to solve these issues. Or to find common ground to have a better outcome. And that's what I'm working for, and that's what I think we all need to do and show that example.
So, I think it's important to understand we're talking about Title IX, okay? And no, you gotta let me finish here, because Title IX was overstepping the executive, you know, what the president could do with respect to totally taking the original Title IX in 1972, turning it upside down, made it into 1,500 pages or whatever it is, and changing the definition of
Okay,
sex.
so Steve, do you have
So,
a point
can
to
I,
make here?
can I talk?
About
Because you're
this
cutting me,
policy?
You're cutting me off.
I think you are off on another
No,
tangent.
I am talking, I'm addressing.
all right.
What's going on.
Yeah.
So, I've been cut off.
I said.
You're talking about board development, you're talking about being respectful to other
Steve?
board members, and I'm being cut off.
Steve,
Do you
please
understand?
continue to make your point. I agree that we don't need to go into the details on a specific topic. I'm stating things broad in general, so continue with where your point you're trying to make.
Okay, yeah. So, the point being is we're talking about something that's very sensitive to most of the public here, does not support that, okay? So thankfully for people here that showed up and public comment and the pressure that was put on, you know, the board, then the right decision was made to table it, okay? So my point is, it's not always gonna be cozy and comfortable for every board member here. And when something like this comes up, that's,
So let me, so I'll just say, are you all done?
Yes.
I don't want, okay. So anything I'll say to that is, I think the most important piece of board development is the fact that we as adults can come together and say, listen, we can all disagree, but when we walk out that door, we are a unified voice. When I first got on the board, that was a very difficult thing. There was a few decisions. I was the only one that voted against it. But I made a point to myself that no matter what I believed, and my belief didn't change when I walked out that door, but I still stood by the board. Even if in my mind I said I completely disagree with what we did, that's what I went with because I decided to be a part of this board. I wasn't forced on it. I put myself on the ballot and I put myself in this seat. So I would urge all of us here, no matter what you believe, at the core of your family, you still have to come to this board meeting because this is public education and there's going to be things you disagree with. But there are staff that are doing the best job they can. There are community members that are going to agree with you, and there's going to be some that disagree. We'll never quantify how many, but we have to agree that when we walk out the door, we're a unified voice. And if you can't do that, then I would say, please get off of the board because you're just damaging the school district. I mean, go be part of something else in the community that you can disagree with. But again, like, we can do it respectfully. We have to. And I think until we all agree that, I don't even want to have a conversation about board development because we're never going to get there. We're just going to spin our wheels. And I think that any adult that if you say, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, I don't need development, that's a huge red flag for me. We all have to humble ourselves and say, I can learn, I can get better, and I'm willing to listen. Even if at the end of the day you never change your mind, you at least told the rest of us sitting here that you're willing to give it a chance. So that's all I'll say. If we can't agree on that, then I don't even want to talk board development because we're too fractured to even get there. These open meeting laws and everything about this board, there's things I'm like, open meeting laws, how stupid is some of this stuff, and we can't talk about it. But it is what it is, and we have to follow the rules. So that's all I'll say. I would urge all of you to just humble yourselves and respect that this is public education.
And that is where the discussion, this is where you make your explanation of, I don't agree with this and this is why. You do it here. You do it here in an open meeting, not on Facebook. And, you know, this is, I think it's
easier for
important.
people who are who have voted for you to go there and look for updates, then if, you know, if they don't have time to
This is how
go
a
through the
board
meeting.
operates. And this is why I strongly feel that we should move forward with board development. I understand your frustration, Matt, that you might not, you don't think perhaps that it's worth it because of where we are now. But how are you gonna move forward if you don't try, if you don't put forth the effort?
Maybe I misspoke. I believe in board development. I think
Oh,
as long as we all say, you know what, I'm willing to humble myself and take it in. I may completely disagree with the presenter, I may hate everything they say, but I'm still willing to sit here because the other 6 people sitting next to me, maybe they need it. Maybe they want it. Just please, if we're gonna do it, we all need to have that open mind.
I agree, and I think it's really important that we do it.
So we all did get an email about some unprofessional conduct by a board member, and Lacey, you were asked to handle that. Do you have anything
Yep,
to
I'm
say?
actually gonna take over when you said that. I have received the complaint. Our school's legal counsel has been contacted for support. There will be no comment regarding the complaint at this time. And as per our policy, upon completion of the investigation, if it's determined that an investigation is needed, the investigator shall brief the board and recommend action to be taken at that time.
So I would like, this is listed on our agenda as possible action. And I read the report from School Perceptions and the WASB. And there's a broad, big list of things that turned up in our survey that we could work on. So I would like to make a motion that we set a meeting to look at that list together and narrow it down to perhaps 2 or 3 items that we can agree that we find are the most important to focus on and work on, with perhaps the assistance of a WASB consultant.
Is there so there's your motion?
Yep.
Is there a second to that motion?
So I don't know if I want to second this or not. I'd like to see it amended slightly. I think it's valid, and let me just speak and then you just tell me how we gotta navigate this.
So I think is there a second to this one? Otherwise, maybe let this motion.
Die.
We'll let this motion die. Okay, Matt.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion then that we use a WASB consultant to help us narrow down that list.
Yeah.
And apply some solutions to those significant problems. That'd be my motion, and if you want rationale, I can give it to you, but I guess that'd be my motion.
So, okay, is there a second?
Yep, I'll second.
Okay, so WASB will come and present to us. I mean, they give us their findings, but they would come and present.
And they already went through our survey,
Yeah.
and so they're familiar with it. They know what they're dealing with.
Yeah, I'd just like to hear from someone. That list is very long, and there's a lot of information there. I'd like to hear from somebody to say like, hey, here's the suggestions on what you tackle first and why. And then, I can make a decision on, do we go forward or not, or maybe the WASB's not right, maybe it's somebody else.
To go.
I just would like some help kind of clearing that
Navigating
the list, yeah.
Sure, yes, I agree.
Okay.
For further discussion with that, I'm gonna go back to kind of what you originally said, Matt. Like, I support that. I 100% agree with board development, but I also agree with you that if everybody's not on board, I think it's a waste of our time, right? We have enough, I mean, the hours that we spend doing this job that we're doing are lengthy enough, so when we talk about scheduling another meeting and doing that, I'm all for that. But if everybody's not going to participate, then I'm not gonna leave my family to come and sit here when it wouldn't be full participation from the board and everybody utilizing the information that we're getting.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I think if anything's gonna happen, it should be unanimous or it's a waste of time.
elephant in the room. Danny, are you gonna attend this meeting?
This one I will.
Okay, Steve, will you attend this?
I'm not sure.
Awesome. I think that solidifies our point. So I guess we'll call for a roll call vote on this. So can you just repeat what or did you take it down, or are you gonna come back and watch?
For the what?
For the motion?
Oh, for the motion, I'll have to probably go back and make sure I get the wording.
But it's to have WASB come into the board and review.
Facilitate with us the list that they've come up with and help us narrow it down.
Yeah, to identify a next step, really.
Did we settle on it being WASB? We had tossed around some other ideas. We are not bringing more up yet.
Well, that's the motion.
Yeah, so I think the reason I said WASB is to simply navigate the list, right? So if WASB helps us break it down, and we now as a board, we know there's 4 areas. Okay, now let's go out and search. Are there 4 consultants that can help us tackle those? Maybe it's not WASB, maybe it could be anybody.
Right.
I just looking for, like, how do we even pick that first person to come even, we need someone to facilitate the discussion on getting that list narrowed down, that's all.
The survey was through WASB.
Yeah,
So it's-
school percent, yeah, WASB school percentage.
So is there an additional cost for WASB to do this?
Yeah, there would be additional cost. I don't know what the cost is. I will reach out to them, find out the cost. So if we could approve this, I would reach out to them with additional costs and then dates. Personally, I would like to tag it on the backside of one of our meetings, so we don't have to do an additional night. I know it gets to be a longer night. Our meeting's already 9 o'clock, but I mean, we could look at our agenda and try to tag it for a 2-hour, talk to them and see how long it needs to be. I'd rather not do a separate night, but if we have to, we can. But I will ask them if that's what we agree to. So there's a motion, there's a second. I'll call for a vote. Matt, I'll start with
Yes.
you. Danny?
Yes.
Bruce, yes. Lacey?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Ian?
Yes.
Steve?
No.
I think we still schedule it,
Yeah.
and we move on.
And Steve, I will just say, I want your opinion. I do. I really do. You're part of this board. You've been voted in. I want to hear your opinion, and I want you to be a part of the decisions and the direction that we go as a board. I think it's valuable, so I hope you do attend this. Otherwise, you don't have a voice in what direction that we do discuss. So I hope you decide to attend. And again, I'll send out the board as soon as I get that information what the plan is going forward. So thank you, everybody. Good discussion. Consent agenda. Are there any motions on the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the personnel update and the athletics activities personnel update as presented.
Can I say something before
I'll second that.
Discussion.
Yeah, just watching the personnel updates, I'm noticing a lot of people leaving special education. I'm just wondering if we can go into closed session maybe once quarterly and talk about get a report on why people are leaving. If
Why
that's
people are
possible.
leaving this?
Why people are leaving the district.
I'm not.
Staff.
I heard you, I was waiting, what did you say?
She wants to go into closed session about why people are leaving.
I'm not sure that requires a closed session or is even legal.
Yeah, that was my initial thought, I don't know.
So like you're talking about
Yeah.
like exit interview type thing?
Yeah, just general broad information on things.
Well, let's
But
see if
you-
we can.
Yeah, I mean, you've done in the past, kind of a report on why people are leaving.
Usually an open.
Yeah, I mean, it's always,
Maybe in a general.
Well, I mean,
Shannon.
in
and
open
Pam.
session, I mean, we could maybe do general themes, but
Right.
I wouldn't be able to tell you this person is going here, or, I mean, depends on what you're looking for. I don't know if you're looking for specific people,
No, I
or if
don't
it's
need to
just
know
the.
names, just general reasons.
Trends like you're saying.
Trends, yeah. Just trends.
That's something we can get.
Yeah.
Look at and report out.
Yeah, that likely wouldn't need a closed session.
All right, is there a motion and a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, moving on, general information, next board meeting is on August 19th. There'll be at 6, and there'll be a listening session 30 minutes prior, 5:30. Make sure board members, if you haven't signed up, Alicia has a new link for, to sign up for the listening sessions. And then only 3 people, please. So, district celebrations, Lacey, I'll start with you.
It was great to hear about the Washington DC trip, and I will echo what Matt had said, having a son that did it 2 years ago, I commend those teachers. So the other thing, the groundbreaking tomorrow, as Shannon already said, and then welcome to all new staff, 25 is a lot. So I know you guys have been working hard to get ready for them. And then also there is circulation with what was said with the wood chips. That 17th and the 24th. Yeah, there's a sign up kind of for volunteers, and I know that was expressed before, like, hey, how can we help? And this is one of those things that is keeping the cost down, so.
Where you said there's a sign up?
So, yeah, I'll jump.
Yeah, I can send it at some point too. It was on the elementary parent
Or just show up,
group, or
even
just.
if you don't sign up, just
Maybe
show up.
that could go even in the Spartan Scoop.
Yeah, I was gonna wonder that too, if we could throw a link into the Spartan School for those 2 days, which would be like, like I set up 8 to noon, and then noon to 4, so people can't be there, you don't feel like you gotta be there all day. It's kind of revolving, see how many people. Working with Mark and Johnson, we'll have a lot of equipment available for everybody. Stephanie said,
Yeah.
okay. Just, yeah, to follow up on that one, parent group will has a Google Doc they can go and sign up on their Facebook page, and then, yeah, if we can get it in the scoop, that would be helpful. A link to that document. Thanks to the admin team for spending 3 hours with us and presenting your last year's goals. We appreciate it, and taking all the extra time and getting ready for the school year. I know there's a lot to get done. And then Shannon too for going through all those things. I know we kind of pushed some things out of July into this month, so that's why this one's kind of so much longer, but thanks for all the presentation and the work on that. Outside the box on that, the daycare for this building is just to look at, so. That's it.
Just looking forward to August 17th and the mulching day.
Matt?
I got nothing else.
Steve?
Nothing.
Ian?
No, I think it's thanks for all the presenters.
And the only thing I had to add was the open house on the 21st. It's always exciting night.
All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Or,
I'll make the motion.
all right, Matt makes a motion, Steve
You
a
second.
second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion adjourned at 9:04. Everybody.